Hells Angels.
According to court documents, the biker gang allegedly poured millions gained from an underground gambling ring into...
The Hells Angels Motorcycle Club stands as one of the most recognized and feared biker organizations in the world. Over time, stories of their alleged racketeering, brutal reprisals, and secret alliances have captivated the public. Many high-ranking or particularly aggressive members are now spending their days behind bars. Let's explore the 10 most dangerous Hells Angels that are currently rotting in jail, uncovering their rise to prominence, their criminal exploits, and the fateful missteps that sealed their journeys to incarceration. Number 10. Raymond Ray Ray Folks.
The former president of the Hells Angels Sonoma chapter, Raymond Ray Ray Folks, is charged with conspiracy, assault, and witness intimidation.
Raymond Ray Ray Folks might not be a household name to the general public, but within the Hells Angels organization, he was somebody who mattered. Born in 1961, Folks rose through the ranks to become president of the Sonoma County chapter in California. With his Hells Angels patches proudly displayed on his leather vest and an intimidating presence, Ray Ray commanded respect both inside the club and in the criminal underworld. As chapter president, Folks wasn't just any ordinary member, he called shots. His word carried weight, and when he gave orders, people listened. New recruits wanted to impress him, established members sought his approval, and law enforcement kept him under surveillance. Ray Ray had the kind of power within the club that most members could only dream about. Throughout his years with the Hells Angels, Folks built up quite a rap sheet. Bar fights, assaults, and various criminal schemes decorated his record. But one incident in particular thrust him into the national spotlight, the infamous Laughlin River Run riot of 2002. This annual motorcycle gathering in Nevada turned bloody when Hells Angels members clashed with their bitter rivals, the Mongols Motorcycle Club. When the dust settled, several people lay dead and many more were injured. Ray Ray was identified as one of the main participants in the violent confrontation, leading to charges of assault and rioting. But surprisingly, violence wasn't what ultimately put Ray Ray behind bars for the long haul. In 2011, federal agents uncovered something unexpected: a sophisticated mortgage fraud scheme with Folks playing a central role. This wasn't your typical biker crime. Ray Ray and several other Hells Angels members had set up an elaborate operation that involved falsifying information on mortgage applications to secure loans, then manipulating the system to extract millions of dollars. The case demonstrated just how diverse the Hells Angels criminal enterprises had become. Beyond the stereotypical violence and drug dealing that people associate with biker gangs, members like Ray Ray were involved in complex financial crimes that required planning, connections, and business knowledge. This wasn't just brawn, it was criminal brains at work. When the evidence against him mounted, Ray Ray found himself facing serious federal charges. Federal judges don't take kindly to mortgage fraud, especially when it's connected to an organization with the Hells Angels reputation. After conviction, Folks was sentenced to years in federal prison, a dramatic fall from his once powerful position within the motorcycle club. Today, Raymond Ray Ray Folks spends his days in a prison cell, a far cry from the freedom of riding his Harley down California's coastal highways with his brothers. His case serves as a stark reminder that the Hells Angels' criminal activities extend far beyond their tough guy image into sophisticated financial schemes that can bring down even their highest-ranking members. While Ray Ray's downfall came through white-collar crime, other Hells Angels like Otis Garrett fell because of more traditional biker-related offenses involving drugs and violence. Number 9. Otis Garrett. Otis Garrett built his reputation in the Hells Angels Ventura chapter the old-fashioned way, through unwavering loyalty and a willingness to handle the club's dirty work. Unlike some members who sought leadership positions, Garrett was known as a reliable soldier, someone who didn't need the spotlight but could always be counted on when things got rough. For decades, Garrett proudly wore his Hells Angels colors, becoming a familiar face at club gatherings across California's Pacific coast. His weathered appearance and no-nonsense demeanor earned him respect within the organization and fear outside of it. Throughout the years, Garrett developed a reputation for toughness and reliability that made him valuable to the club's operations. Garrett's criminal record tells the story of a man fully committed to the outlaw biker lifestyle. While some Hells Angels managed to balance club life with legitimate work, Garrett embraced the darker side of the organization. His lengthy record included multiple arrests for assault, typically connected to conflicts with rival motorcycle clubs like the Mongols and Vagos. These violent encounters were part of the ongoing territorial disputes that defined relations between competing outlaw clubs in Southern California. But it was drug trafficking that ultimately led to Garrett's downfall. In 2014, the Ventura Police Department coordinated a major operation targeting the Hells Angels drug distribution network in the county. This wasn't a small-time bust. It involved multiple law enforcement agencies working together to dismantle what they described as a sophisticated operation distributing methamphetamine and cocaine throughout the region. When police raided Garrett's residence, they discovered substantial quantities of drugs and multiple firearms. For Garrett, who already had felony convictions on his record, the possession of these weapons added significant complications to his legal troubles. Each gun found in his home represented another charge, another reason for prosecutors to seek maximum penalties. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Drugs, guns, surveillance footage, phone records, and testimony from informants all painted a damning picture of his involvement in organized criminal activity. Prosecutors portrayed Garrett as a key figure in the Hells Angels drug operation in Ventura County, presenting evidence showing how he helped coordinate distribution networks, managed relations with suppliers, and enforced the club's control over local drug markets. The judge showed little mercy during sentencing, citing Garrett's extensive criminal history and his central role in drug trafficking operations. For a man who had spent decades living by his own rules on the open road, the confinement of prison walls represented a dramatic change of circumstances. Today, Otis Garrett remains behind bars, serving his sentence in a California state prison. His case demonstrates how local chapters of the Hells Angels operate criminal enterprises that inevitably attract law enforcement attention. His fall from respected club member to prison inmate reveals the risks that come with the outlaw lifestyle. While Garrett's criminal activities were centered in Ventura County, other Hells Angels members, like Randy "Mad" Jerger, operated on a much larger scale, becoming targets of nationwide manhunts and international police operations. Number 8. Randy Yeager.
Randy Yeager is one of the worst of them all.
Known by his nickname Mad, Randy Yeager was the regional president of the Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana area outlaws.
Few members of the Hells Angels have achieved the level of notoriety that surrounds Randy "Mad" Jerger. His story reads like something from a crime movie, rising through club ranks, becoming a regional president, facing serious criminal charges, and then disappearing for nearly 2 decades as one of America's most wanted fugitives. Born in 1956, Jerger grew up during a time when motorcycle clubs were gaining prominence across America. The rebellious culture of the 1960s and 70s attracted many young men seeking brotherhood and adventure outside mainstream society. For Jerger, the Hells Angels offered not just excitement, but a chance to build a reputation and gain respect in a world that operated by its own rules. What set Jerger apart was his natural leadership abilities and fierce dedication to the club. Over time, he rose through the ranks to become the Midwest president of the Hells Angels, overseeing chapters across several states. This wasn't just any position. It placed him among the elite of the club's hierarchy and made him a high-value target for law enforcement agencies monitoring outlaw motorcycle clubs. His nickname MAD wasn't chosen randomly. Fellow members and rivals alike knew Jerger for his explosive temperament and unwillingness to back down from confrontation. When disputes arose between the Hells Angels and rival clubs, Jerger often stood at the front lines, ready to defend his brothers and the club's reputation at any cost. This fierce loyalty earned him deep respect within the organization, but also put him directly in the crosshairs of federal investigators. In 1997, everything changed for Jerger when a federal grand jury handed down indictments against him and several other Hells Angels members. The charges were extensive and serious: drug trafficking, racketeering, and various violent crimes. Federal prosecutors had built their case over years, gathering evidence through informants, surveillance, and undercover operations. When the indictments came down, it was clear that authorities were determined to dismantle what they saw as a criminal organization operating under the guise of a motorcycle club. But unlike many of his fellow club members who were arrested and faced trial, Jerger made a fateful decision. Rather than surrender to authorities and fight the charges in court, he vanished. This choice put him on the FBI's most wanted list and launched what would become one of the longest manhunts in American history. For 17 years, Randy "Mad" Jerger lived as a ghost. While his former brothers faced trials and prison sentences, Jerger managed to stay one step ahead of the law. Rumors placed him in various countries, sometimes in Canada, other times in South America or Europe. Some believed he had help from international Hells Angels chapters, while others thought he might have established a new identity entirely separate from the biker world. The mystery of Jerger's whereabouts came to an end in 2014, when authorities finally caught up with him in Mexico's Baja California region. After nearly 2 decades on the run, the former Hells Angels leader was captured and brought back to the United States to face justice. His arrest made headlines across the country, marking the end of one of America's longest-standing fugitive cases. Upon his return to American soil, Jerger faced a justice system determined to make an example of him. Despite the years that had passed since his original indictment, prosecutors pushed forward with the case, presenting evidence of his involvement in drug trafficking and racketeering operations. After a trial that drew significant media attention, Jerger was convicted on multiple counts and sentenced to a lengthy prison term. Today, the man once known as Mad spends his days in federal prison, his legend within the Hells Angels now serving as both a cautionary tale and a testament to the club's defiant spirit. His story of evasion and capture has become part of Hells Angels lore, discussed in hushed tones among members who still respect his determination to avoid capture for so long. While Randy Jerger evaded authorities through traditional means, hiding, disguises, and border crossings, another Hells Angel used his professional position as cover for criminal activities. James Kaufman's story shows how the reach of the Hells Angels extended beyond stereotypical bikers into surprising corners of society. Number 7 Doctor, James Kaufman.
Today, James Kaufman, age 69, and Ferdinand Augello, age 62, were charged with murder in connection with the death of April Kaufman.
The story of Dr. James Kaufman stands apart from typical Hells Angels narratives, representing how the club's criminal network extended beyond tattooed bikers to include individuals from unexpected walks of life. As a board-certified endocrinologist from Atlantic County, New Jersey, with a successful medical practice, Kaufman presented himself as a respected healthcare professional, while secretly maintaining connections to one of America's most notorious motorcycle clubs. Born in 1966 to an upper-middle-class family in Philadelphia, Kaufman followed a traditional path to success. He graduated from Temple University School of Medicine in 1992, completing his residency and endocrinology fellowship at prestigious institutions before establishing his practice in Egg Harbor Township, New Jersey in 2000. Colleagues described him as brilliant but somewhat detached, a competent physician who drove expensive cars and lived in a sprawling $850,000 home in Linwood with his wife, April. Unlike the leather-clad Harley-riding members typically associated with the Hells Angels, Kaufman maintained an impeccable professional appearance that allowed him to move through medical circles without raising suspicion. His white coat, designer suits, and Ivy League vocabulary gave him a level of respectability that most outlaw bikers could never achieve, making him particularly valuable to criminal networks. Kaufman's double life began to unravel on May 10, 2012, with the shocking murder of his wife, April Kaufman, a 47-year-old local radio talk show host, veterans advocate, and businesswoman who had been married to the doctor for 10 years. A handyman discovered April's body, shot multiple times in the face and torso, in the couple's bedroom. Initially, the case puzzled investigators. April was well liked in the community, serving on the county's Veteran Advisory Board while running a catering business and hosting a weekly radio program on WOND. As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered disturbing connections. According to court documents, April had recently told friends she had discovered James was involved in something dangerous and was planning to divorce him. She had consulted a divorce attorney just days before her murder and had begun moving personal belongings out of their shared home. The investigation exposed a massive prescription drug operation. Dr. Kaufman had allegedly been writing fraudulent prescriptions for OxyContin and other powerful opioid medications since at least 2011. According to prosecutors, Kaufman wrote hundreds of prescriptions monthly for individuals who were never properly examined, creating a pipeline of thousands of pills with a street value exceeding $3 million annually. What made Kaufman's operation particularly sophisticated was his meticulous record-keeping. He maintained false patient charts, documented fictional examinations, and even arranged for blood tests to create the appearance of legitimate medical care. Meanwhile, these patients, many recruited by associates with connections to outlaw motorcycle clubs, would fill the prescriptions at different pharmacies across multiple counties to avoid detection. Perhaps most surprisingly, investigators discovered Kaufman's connections crossed traditional outlaw motorcycle club boundaries. He initially formed relationships with members of the Pagans Motorcycle Club, traditional rivals of the Hells Angels, through patients at his medical practice around 2008. As his illegal prescribing operation expanded, he established connections with Hells Angels members as well, becoming a valuable supplier to both organizations. A dangerous position in the typically territorial world of outlaw motorcycle clubs. The most disturbing revelation came when investigators connected Kaufman to his wife's murder through Frances Mulholland, a cousin of a Pagans member. According to authorities, when April discovered her husband's illegal activities and threatened divorce, which would both end their marriage and potentially expose his criminal operations, Kaufman orchestrated her murder through his biker connections. Court records indicate he paid Mulholland $20,000 to kill April, with the hitman later dying of a drug overdose before he could be charged. After a 5-year investigation involving the FBI, DEA, and local authorities, police finally arrested Kaufman on June 13, 2017. The charges were extensive: first-degree murder, racketeering, leading a narcotics network, maintaining a drug production facility, and weapons offenses. When officers arrived at his office with an arrest warrant, Kaufman revealed how far he had fallen from his professional persona. He brandished a 9mm handgun, leading to a tense 45-minute standoff with police before negotiators convinced him to surrender. Following his arrest, Kaufman's case became a media sensation across New Jersey. The story of a respected doctor involved with outlaw bikers and implicated in his wife's murder captivated the public's attention, earning front-page coverage and extensive television reporting. It exposed the unexpected reach of organizations like the Hells Angels into seemingly respectable corners of society. In a final dark twist to his story, Kaufman never faced sentencing for his crimes. On January 26, 2018, just weeks after being indicted by a grand jury, but before his trial could begin, guards found him dead in his cell at the Atlantic County Justice Facility. He had hanged himself with a bedsheet. His suicide left many questions unanswered, but didn't diminish the impact of his case. Today, the Kaufman case has become a landmark example, cited in medical ethics courses and law enforcement training about the opioid epidemic. His story serves as a sobering reminder that the Hells Angels' criminal operations aren't limited to stereotypical bikers, but can involve professionals from all walks of life. It also underscores the devastating impact of prescription drug diversion and how trusted medical professionals have sometimes played a crucial role in feeding addiction across America. While Dr. Kaufman represented an unusual connection to the Hells Angels world, more traditional members like Rusty Coons embodied the leadership and organizational structure that made the club's criminal activities possible on a larger scale, creating the demand for the very drugs that doctors like Kaufman illicitly supplied. Number 6. Rusty Coons.
Happens, and all of a sudden everything you've held dear, everything that you love.
Harold Rusty Coons commanded attention wherever he went. Standing 6 feet 5 inches with a muscular 245-pound frame covered in distinctive Hells Angels tattoos, he physically embodied the intimidating presence the club cultivated. Born in 1953 in Bakersfield, California, Coons grew up during a transformative era when motorcycle clubs were evolving from groups of thrill-seeking veterans into organized fraternities with their own codes, territories, and increasingly criminal enterprises. From an early age, Coons showed an interest in motorcycles that went beyond casual enthusiasm. While other kids had posters of rock stars on their bedroom walls, young Rusty was fascinated by the powerful machines that symbolized freedom and rebellion. By 16, he had already purchased his first motorcycle, a beat-up Harley Sportster that he meticulously restored in his father's garage. This passion only grew stronger as he matured, eventually leading him to seek out others who shared his dedication to the biker lifestyle. Coons first encountered the Hells Angels at a motorcycle rally in 1974, immediately drawn to their brotherhood and outlaw reputation. After a 2-year prospecting period where he proved his loyalty through increasingly risky activities, Coons earned his patches and became a full member of the San Bernardino chapter. His natural charisma, imposing presence, and strategic mind quickly set him apart from ordinary members. What distinguished Coons from many other Hells Angels members was his exceptional leadership ability. Over the years, he rose through the club's ranks, eventually serving as president of both the San Fernando Valley and Orange County chapters at different points in his career. These weren't minor positions. Chapter presidents make decisions affecting dozens of members and oversee territories generating significant income through both legitimate and illegal activities. As a leader, Coons was known for his assertiveness, strategic thinking, and business acumen. Under his guidance, the chapters he led expanded their influence throughout Southern California, establishing profitable relationships with drug suppliers and building a sophisticated distribution network that moved methamphetamine throughout the region. Fellow members respected his dedication to the club and his willingness to take calculated risks on its behalf. FBI documents later revealed that during Coons' leadership in the 1990s, the Orange County chapter's drug operations were generating over $2 million annually. He implemented a complex system where lower-ranking members and associates handled street-level sales, insulating higher-ranking members from direct criminal exposure. This organizational structure allowed the chapter to operate more efficiently while minimizing legal risks to its leadership, at least temporarily. Coons' first major legal trouble came in 1999 when authorities arrested him on charges of conspiring to distribute methamphetamine. The investigation had targeted the Hells Angels drug trafficking operations, with Coons identified as a key figure in organizing distribution networks throughout Southern California. Despite hiring top defense attorneys and maintaining his innocence, the evidence proved overwhelming. Surveillance recordings, financial records, and testimony from cooperating witnesses established his central role in the operation, resulting in a 6-year federal prison sentence. This first prison term might have convinced some to walk away from the outlaw lifestyle, but Coons remained dedicated to the Hells Angels. Upon his release in 2005, he returned to active membership, despite the strict terms of his parole. Within months, he had reclaimed significant influence within the organization, serving as an advisor to newer chapter presidents and helping coordinate activities between different Hells Angels chapters throughout California. In 2011, Coons again found himself facing serious legal troubles when he was charged with illegal firearms possession. This case was connected to a controversial ATF operation called Black Biscuit, which aimed to infiltrate and gather evidence against outlaw motorcycle clubs. For over 18 months, undercover agents had posed as bikers, gaining the trust of Hells Angels members and documenting their alleged criminal activities through hidden cameras and recording devices. Coons and his defense team argued vigorously that the charges were the result of entrapment, claiming that undercover agents had pressured or manipulated him into illegal actions he wouldn't otherwise have committed. Court transcripts revealed heated exchanges between Coons' attorney and federal prosecutors over the ethics of the operation, with the defense arguing that agents had crossed legal boundaries in their pursuit of convictions. Despite these arguments, the court was not persuaded. Video evidence showed Coons not only possessing the illegal firearms, but also discussing their potential use against rival motorcycle clubs. He was convicted and sentenced to another 15-year prison term at the Federal Correctional Institution in Victorville, California. Today, at 70 years old, Rusty Coons continues to serve his sentence, with release not anticipated until 2026. Prison officials have documented his continued influence within the Hells Angels network, noting that he receives numerous visitors from active members and maintains correspondence with chapters across the country. According to confidential informants, his advice is still sought on major club decisions, and his approval carries significant weight even from behind prison walls. His case serves as a potent example of how involvement with the Hells Angels can lead even the most cautious members into serious legal jeopardy. The very qualities that made Coons successful within the club, his leadership abilities, strategic thinking, and willingness to take calculated risks, ultimately contributed to the circumstances that led to his imprisonment. Despite his incarceration, Coons' influence within the Hells Angels remains significant. Younger members still speak of him with reverence, and his approach to club leadership continues to shape how chapter presidents operate throughout California. His story has become part of the club's internal mythology. A cautionary tale, perhaps, but also an example of unwavering loyalty to the organization, even in the face of severe personal consequences. While Rusty Coons commanded respect through his leadership of local chapters, few Hells Angels have shaped the entire organization as profoundly as our next entry. A man who defined what it meant to be a Hells Angel for generations of members who would follow in his footsteps. Number 5. Sonny Barger.
Can you tell me who becomes a member of a motorcycle club? What's the kind of person that the lifestyle is?
Well, it's just a guy that likes to ride a motorcycle and sort of, have a freewheel and kind of lifestyle. Now, there's a lot of people that ride motorcycles that don't join clubs.
If there's one name that stands above all others in the history of the Hells Angels, it has to be Ralph "Sonny" Barger. While many members have come and gone over the decades, Barger's influence on the club has been so profound that he's often referred to as the face of the Hells Angels worldwide. Born in 1938 in Modesto, California, Barger's early life wasn't easy. Raised primarily by his alcoholic father after his mother abandoned the family, young Ralph learned street smarts and self-reliance from an early age. By the time he was a teenager, Barger had already developed the tough, independent attitude that would define his life. After a brief stint in the army, from which he received an honorable discharge when they discovered he was only 16 years old, Barger returned to California, ready to find his place in the world. That place would be on 2 wheels. In 1957, at just 18 years old, Barger founded the Oakland chapter of the Hells Angels, which would go on to become the most influential chapter in the entire organization. Under his leadership, the Oakland Hells Angels established many of the traditions, rules, and symbols that would eventually spread to chapters worldwide. Barger didn't just join the outlaw biker movement, he helped define what it would become. What separated Barger from other outlaw bikers was his intelligence and media savvy. While most Hells Angels avoided publicity and reporters, Barger understood the power of image. He appeared in national magazines, gave newspaper interviews, and eventually authored books about his experiences. This willingness to step into the spotlight made him the unofficial spokesman for the entire club, a position that gave him enormous influence both inside and outside the organization. Barger's charisma was magnetic, attracting people to the Hells Angels lifestyle. He spoke about freedom, brotherhood, and loyalty in ways that resonated with disaffected young men seeking meaning and community. His articulate defense of the outlaw lifestyle, despite its obvious dangers and questionable legality, brought many new members into the club who might otherwise never have considered joining. Of course, Sonny Barger's life with the Hells Angels wasn't all media appearances and recruitment. Like many members, he faced his share of legal troubles. His first major confrontation with the law came in 1972, when he and 3 other Hells Angels were charged with murdering a Texas drug dealer. After a lengthy trial that brought national attention, all 4 were acquitted due to lack of evidence. Barger's most serious legal troubles came in 1988, when federal authorities charged him and 14 other Hells Angels members with conspiracy to violate federal explosives and firearms laws. The indictment alleged that they had plotted to kill members of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club and blow up their clubhouse in Louisville, Kentucky, in retaliation for an attack on Hells Angels members. This time, Barger couldn't escape conviction. he was found guilty and sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. This wasn't Barger's first time behind bars. Throughout his life with the Hells Angels, he served several shorter sentences for various offenses, including drug possession and assault. Each time he emerged from prison, his status within the club remained undiminished. If anything, his periods of incarceration only enhanced his reputation among the Angels. Beyond his legal troubles, Barger faced personal challenges that tested his legendary toughness. In the early 1980s, he was diagnosed with throat cancer, likely a result of decades of heavy smoking. The disease required the removal of his vocal cords, leaving him with a distinctively raspy voice produced by an artificial voice box. Despite this setback, Barger continued his active lifestyle with the Hells Angels, showing the same determination that had defined his earlier years. What truly set Barger apart from other Hells Angels leaders was his business acumen. Understanding that the club's outlaw image had commercial value, he worked to protect and monetize the Hells Angels brand. Under his guidance, the club trademarked its famous Death Head logo and aggressively pursued legal action against unauthorized use. This transformation of the Hells Angels into not just a motorcycle club, but a recognizable brand with intellectual property rights showed Barger's forward-thinking and pragmatic approach to leadership. Despite his advanced age and health challenges, Sonny Barger remained a revered figure within the Hells Angels until his death in 2022. His books, including his autobiography, Hells Angel: The Life and Times of Sonny Barger and the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, sold hundreds of thousands of copies, introducing new generations to the outlaw motorcycle lifestyle. His ability to present the Hells Angels as misunderstood freedom seekers rather than dangerous criminals helped shape public perception of the club. While Barger achieved fame within America as the face of the Hells Angels, other members gained notoriety internationally, showing how the club's influence extended worldwide. Brandon Cole represents this global reach, demonstrating how the Hells Angels spread their operations and their criminal activities far beyond American shores. Number 4. Brandon Cole. Far from the California highways where the Hells Angels were born, Brandon the Kiwi Cole built his reputation as one of the most dangerous members of the organization's expanding international network. As a founding member of the Auckland, New Zealand chapter and later a key figure in the Melbourne, Australia chapter, Cole represents how the Hells Angels transformed from an American phenomenon into a sophisticated global criminal enterprise with chapters on every continent. Born in 1972 in Christchurch, New Zealand, Cole's path to becoming a Hells Angel began in his late teens when he developed an obsession with motorcycle culture. Unlike many who joined for the brotherhood or the thrill of the open road, Cole recognized early on that the club could provide opportunities for criminal profit. After serving time in a New Zealand prison for assault in his early 20s, Cole emerged with connections and a reputation that caught the attention of the newly forming Hells Angels presence in the country. Standing just over 6 feet tall with a muscular build enhanced through obsessive prison workouts, Cole cut an intimidating figure even by Hells Angels standards. His arms were covered in traditional Maori-inspired biker tattoos, with HAMC, Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, prominently displayed across his knuckles. Most distinctive was the large Death Head logo tattooed across his back, a permanent commitment to the club that would ultimately lead to his downfall. Cole quickly rose through the ranks after helping establish the Auckland chapter in 1999, becoming the club's sergeant-at-arms within 2 years. His reputation for brutal enforcement and absolute loyalty made him a valuable asset as the Hells Angels expanded their presence throughout the South Pacific. By 2003, his connections had grown so valuable that he was transferred to the Melbourne chapter to help solidify the club's growing drug distribution network between Southeast Asia and Australia. What made Cole particularly valuable to the Hells Angels wasn't just his willingness to use violence, but his remarkable network of international connections. Through family ties in New Zealand and relationships cultivated with Southeast Asian suppliers during his frequent business trips to Thailand and Vietnam, Cole helped establish sophisticated supply routes that brought massive quantities of methamphetamine and heroin into Australia and New Zealand, markets where such drugs commanded some of the highest street prices in the world. Under Cole's guidance, the Hells Angels Melbourne chapter became one of the wealthiest outposts in the entire organization. Intelligence reports from the Australian Federal Police estimated that the operation he oversaw generated upwards of 25 million Australian dollars annually. Cole personally maintained properties in both Melbourne and Auckland, along with a fleet of luxury vehicles and motorcycles that he kept registered under various shell companies. Cole wasn't content to operate solely behind the scenes. Known for his explosive temper and sadistic streak, he became the Melbourne chapter's primary enforcer, personally handling situations when business partners failed to meet obligations or rival gangs encroached on Hells Angels territory. Former associates who later testified against him described incidents where Cole tortured competitors who crossed the organization, reportedly keeping a collection of trophies from these encounters hidden at his heavily fortified compound outside Melbourne. By 2010, Australian authorities had identified Cole as one of the most dangerous organised crime figures in the country. Operation Pacific Thunder, a joint task force between the Australian Federal Police, Victoria Police and New Zealand authorities, placed Cole under intensive surveillance for nearly 2 years, mapping his connections and building an airtight case against the biker. The operation culminated in June 2012, when coordinated pre-dawn raids hit 24 locations across Victoria and New South Wales. When tactical officers breached Cole's compound, they discovered not only his personal arsenal of 17 unregistered firearms, including military-grade weapons with serial numbers filed, but also a sophisticated drug processing laboratory, over $3.4 million in cash, and detailed ledgers documenting the Hells Angels distribution network throughout the South Pacific. The judge showed no mercy, sentencing Cole to 28 years imprisonment with a non-parole period of 22 years, one of the harshest sentences ever imposed on a Hells Angels member in the Pacific region. Additionally, authorities seized over $42 million in assets connected to his criminal empire. Today, Brandon the Kiwi Cole serves his sentence in Port Phillip Prison, a maximum security facility in Victoria, where he remains isolated from the brotherhood and freedom that once defined his life. His case represents the increasing sophistication of the Hells Angels' global criminal operations and the corresponding evolution of international law enforcement responses. Despite being thousands of miles from the club's California birthplace, Cole embraced and expanded the same outlaw ethos that defined the Hells Angels from their beginning, building an international criminal network that continues to influence the organization even after his imprisonment. While Cole built his criminal empire across the Pacific, another figure was rising to even greater heights within the Hells Angels global hierarchy. George Wiegers would become one of the most powerful leaders in the club's history before his own criminal activities brought about his dramatic downfall. Number 3. George Wiegers. In the hierarchy of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, few positions carry more power or responsibility than that of international president. George Wiegers held this coveted position during a crucial period of the club's expansion, overseeing its transformation from an American phenomenon to a global network with chapters on 6 continents. Standing over 6 feet tall with a heavy build that earned him respect in the physical world of outlaw bikers, Wiegers was immediately recognizable by his distinctive appearance. With his weathered face, long beard, and arms covered in traditional biker tattoos, he embodied the Hells Angels aesthetic that had fascinated and terrified the public for decades. Born in the early 1950s, Wiegers came of age during the golden era of American motorcycle culture. Like many young men of his generation, he was drawn to the freedom and rebellion represented by groups like the Hells Angels. What set Wiegers apart, however, was his organizational mind and natural leadership abilities. Where some bikers were content to ride and party, Wiegers saw the potential for the Hells Angels to become something bigger and more powerful. As he rose through the ranks from ordinary member to chapter officer to regional leader, Wiegers developed a reputation for balancing the club's traditional values with modern criminal enterprises. Under his guidance, the Hells Angels diversified their illicit income streams, moving beyond their stereotypical involvement in drugs and prostitution into more sophisticated operations like extortion, money laundering, and infiltration of legitimate businesses. What truly distinguished Wiegers' leadership was his vision for international expansion. Recognizing that the Hells Angels brand had global appeal, he encouraged the establishment of new chapters worldwide. During his tenure as international president, the club significantly increased its presence in Europe, Australia, and South America. Each new chapter represented not just additional members, but new criminal opportunities and extended influence. This international growth didn't go unnoticed by law enforcement. By the early 2000s, federal authorities in the United States had identified the Hells Angels as a significant organized crime threat requiring coordinated response. Waggers became a prime target of these efforts, with investigators building a case that would eventually bring down one of the most powerful figures in the club's history. In 2002, following a multi-year investigation that involved wiretaps, surveillance, and information from confidential informants, federal agents executed simultaneous raids on Hells Angels chapters across the country. Waggers was arrested at his home, where authorities found not only incriminating documents related to the club's operations, but also illegal firearms and significant quantities of drugs. Waggers' trial became a media spectacle that offered rare insights into the inner workings of the Hells Angels. Former members testified about the club's structure and criminal operations, while recordings captured Waggers discussing various illegal activities. Despite his attorney's efforts to portray him as merely the leader of a motorcycle enthusiast group, the evidence of his involvement in organized crime proved overwhelming. After a lengthy trial, the jury found Waggers guilty on multiple counts. The judge, citing the extensive nature of the criminal enterprise Waggers had led and his lack of remorse, handed down a sentence of 23 years in federal prison, effectively a life sentence for a man already in his 50s. Additionally, the court ordered the forfeiture of millions in assets connected to his criminal activities, stripping away the wealth he had accumulated during his years as a Hells Angel. Today, George Waggers remains behind bars, his legendary status within the Hells Angels now serving as a cautionary tale about the consequences of leadership in an outlaw organization. Despite his imprisonment, his influence on the club's structure and operations continues to be felt, with many of the international chapters he established still active in their respective countries. Waggers' case highlights the evolution of the Hells Angels from a group of rebellious bikers to a sophisticated criminal organization with global reach. His rise and fall demonstrate both the potential rewards and severe risks that come with ascending to the highest levels of the outlaw biker world. While Waggers' crimes were organizational in nature, involving the coordination of criminal enterprises across multiple countries, other Hells Angels members have fallen due to more personal and violent crimes. One such figure was Daniel "Hothead" Roberts, whose story reveals the darker side of the Hells Angels lifestyle when violence spills over into members' personal lives. Number 2. Daniel Roberts. Some Hells Angels earn their nicknames through amusing incidents or physical characteristics, but Daniel Roberts' road name, Hothead, was a direct warning about his volatile temperament. As Sergeant-at-Arms for the Halifax, Nova Scotia chapter in Canada, Roberts combined his official role as the club's enforcer with a personal tendency toward violence that would eventually lead to tragedy. Born in a small fishing community on Canada's east coast, Roberts' early life gave no indication of the path he would eventually take. Growing up in a working-class family, he initially followed his father into the commercial fishing industry. The hard physical labor and dangerous conditions of life at sea helped build the imposing physical presence that would later serve him well in the biker world. Standing 6 feet 4 inches tall, with powerful shoulders and arms developed through years of hauling fishing nets, Roberts' introduction to the Hells Angels came in his late 20s when he purchased his first motorcycle and began socializing with members of local riding clubs. His size, toughness, and willingness to engage in violence quickly caught the attention of Hells Angels members who were looking to expand their presence in Halifax. After serving as a prospect for nearly 2 years, during which he proved his loyalty through various criminal activities, Roberts received his full membership patches around 2000. What distinguished Roberts within the club was his embrace of the enforcer role. As Sergeant-at-Arms, he was officially responsible for maintaining order at club meetings and ensuring members followed the Hells Angels rules. Unofficially, this position also made him the chapter's primary instrument of violence, the man called upon when someone needed to be intimidated, beaten, or worse. Roberts took to this role with disturbing enthusiasm, building a reputation for brutality that extended beyond the club to the wider criminal underworld of Nova Scotia. The relationship between Roberts and his girlfriend, Shannon MacDonald, embodied the complex and often troubled romantic partnerships that develop around outlaw motorcycle clubs. MacDonald, attracted initially to Roberts's power within the Halifax criminal scene, soon found herself in an increasingly controlling and abusive relationship. Friends later testified that she had repeatedly tried to leave him, only to return after threats and promises of change. The situation reached its breaking point in 2004, when MacDonald finally gathered the courage to end the relationship permanently. According to court testimony, she had begun seeing another man and told friends she was planning to move to another province to escape Roberts's influence. For a man whose identity was built around control and respect, this rejection represented an unacceptable challenge. On April 20, 2004, neighbors heard shouting from Roberts's home, followed by gunshots. When police arrived, they found MacDonald dead from multiple gunshot wounds. Roberts had fled the scene but was arrested the following day at another Hells Angels member's home. The murder weapon, a 9mm handgun with Roberts's fingerprints, was recovered from a nearby lake based on information from a confidential informant. Roberts's trial became one of the most high-profile criminal cases in Halifax history. Prosecutors presented evidence of his history of violence, testimony from witnesses who had heard him threaten MacDonald in the weeks before her murder, and forensic evidence linking him to the crime scene. His defense team attempted to attribute the killing to unknown drug dealers or rival bikers, but the jury remained unconvinced by these alternative theories. After deliberating for just 6 hours, the jury found Roberts guilty of first-degree murder. Under Canadian law, this conviction carried a mandatory sentence of life imprisonment with no possibility of parole for 25 years. As the judge read the sentence, Roberts showed the same emotionless expression he had maintained throughout the trial, while members of MacDonald's family finally saw some measure of justice for their lost loved one. Today, Daniel "Hothead" Roberts remains incarcerated in a maximum security federal prison in Canada. His case stands as one of the most stark examples of how the Hells Angels culture of violence can spill over from club business into members' personal lives, with tragic consequences. While most crimes associated with outlaw motorcycle clubs involve drugs, extortion, or conflict with rival gangs, Roberts's case reminds us that the capacity for violence fostered in these organizations can claim victims far removed from the biker world. Roberts's violent nature and tragic crime demonstrates the darkest side of the Hells Angels lifestyle. For our final entry, we'll examine another notorious member whose criminal activities have earned him a long-term residence behind bars, replacing our previous entry with someone whose impact on the organization was even more significant. Number 1. Maurice "Mom" Boucher.
Boucher was the head of an elite chapter of the Hells Angels. Everyone knew Mom Boucher was a killer, and he knew everyone knew.
Few names strike as much fear in Canadian law enforcement circles as Maurice "Mom" Boucher. As the former president of the Montreal chapter of the Hells Angels, Boucher wasn't just any outlaw biker. He was the architect of one of the bloodiest periods in Canadian organized crime history. A man whose ambition and ruthlessness transformed the Hells Angels from a motorcycle club into a sophisticated criminal empire in Quebec. Born in 1953 in a working-class Montreal neighborhood, Boucher's path to becoming one of Canada's most notorious criminals began early. By his teens, he was already involved in petty crime, which escalated to armed robbery by his early 20s. After serving time for sexual assault in the 1980s, Boucher found his true calling when he joined the Hells Angels, quickly rising through the ranks due to his intelligence, charisma, and willingness to use extreme violence to achieve his goals. What set Boucher apart from other Hells Angels leaders was his business vision. Under his leadership in the 1990s, the Montreal chapter moved beyond traditional biker crimes into an aggressive expansion of their drug trafficking operations. Boucher understood that control of Montreal's lucrative drug market required both organization and intimidation. He established a structured system where puppet clubs like the Rockers would handle street-level drug sales while the Hells Angels managed wholesale distribution, creating a criminal hierarchy that maximized profits while insulating higher-ranking members from direct criminal exposure. Boucher's nickname Mom, pronounced Môme in French, came not from any maternal qualities but was supposedly a shortened version of Mommy. Ironic for one of the most feared criminals in Canadian history. Standing around 5 feet 10 inches with a stocky build and often seen with a serious, calculating expression, Boucher didn't need physical intimidation to command respect. His reputation for ordering brutal violence against anyone who crossed him was enough. The infamous Quebec Biker War of the 1990s cemented Boucher's notorious legacy. This conflict between the Hells Angels and the rival Rock Machine Motorcycle Club over control of Quebec's drug trade claimed over 160 lives between 1994 and 2002. Under Boucher's leadership, the Hells Angels didn't just target rival gang members, they engaged in bombings, public assassinations, and intimidation campaigns that horrified ordinary citizens and forced authorities to create specialized biker gang units. Boucher's most shocking order came in 1997, when he directed the assassination of 2 prison guards, Diane Levine and Pierre Rondeau. These killings weren't related to any personal grievances. They were calculated strategic moves to intimidate the justice system itself. The murders crossed a line that even hardened criminals recognized, turning public opinion firmly against the Hells Angels and making Boucher the most wanted man in Canada. Despite massive police efforts to bring him to justice, Boucher initially proved elusive. His first trial for the prison guard murders ended in acquittal in 1998, with Boucher famously celebrating by taking a victory lap around Montreal on his motorcycle surrounded by fellow Hells Angels members. This bold demonstration of defiance only increased his legend within the criminal underworld. However, Boucher's reign couldn't last forever. In 2002, a second trial based on new evidence and testimony from former associates resulted in his conviction for ordering the murders of the prison guards. The jury found him guilty of first-degree murder, and the judge sentenced him to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole for 25 years, the maximum penalty under Canadian law. Today, Maurice Mom Boucher remains one of the most infamous inmates in the Canadian prison system. His case represents the heights of power that Hells Angels leaders can achieve in the criminal underworld and the inevitable fall that comes with such a high-profile criminal lifestyle. His legacy of violence transformed not only the Hells Angels in Canada, but also how law enforcement approaches outlaw motorcycle gangs, leading to specialized police units and new laws specifically targeting biker gang activities. Despite decades of law enforcement pressure, criminal prosecutions, and the imprisonment of key figures, the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club continues to operate worldwide. The willingness of new generations to risk their freedom by joining this organization speaks to the powerful allure of its outlaw image. However, as these profiles have shown, the reality behind that image often leads to tragic consequences for members, their families, and their communities.
A shooting that killed 2 people and sent 2 others to the hospital has been traced back to a territory beef between 2 rival gangs.
When leather meets asphalt and brotherhood turns to bloodshed, history's darkest motorcycle moments are written. These aren't your weekend riders. They're the 1%ers, the outlaws who've shaped motorcycle club culture through violence, territory wars, and internal purges. They've anchored the concept of outlaw bikers in our cultural consciousness. Grab a beer and buckle up. We're taking a ride through the most infamous motorcycle massacres in history. Number 10. Hollister Riot, 1947. July 4th weekend, 1947, a date that forever changed America's thinking of motorcyclists and birthed the outlaw biker image that still exists today. The sleepy California town of Hollister was about to experience an invasion that would make headlines across the country and spawn decades of biker mythology. What went down in Hollister wasn't planned, it just happened. About 4,000 bikers rolled into this little farming town for the AMA-sanctioned Gypsy Tour motorcycle rally. The town had hosted these events before without major issues, but this was the first big rally after World War II ended. Thousands of young men, fresh from combat, with money in their pockets and a hunger for adrenaline, converged on a town with a police force of just 7 officers. You do the math. The trouble kicked off when booze started flowing. bikers raced their choppers down Main Street, popping wheelies and burning rubber. Some guys decided drinking inside was boring, so they just rode their motorcycles straight into bars. Glass bottles shattered against buildings. Fights broke out. Drunken bikers passed out on sidewalks, in parks, anywhere they fell. The few cops couldn't do much beyond arrest the worst offenders, and the tiny local jail filled up fast. Now here's where things get interesting. Was it actually a riot? Probably not, at least not by today's standards. Local residents later said the media massively overblew what happened. Yeah, there was public drunkenness, some property damage and rowdiness, but nothing that unusual for a massive gathering fueled by alcohol. Most bikers were just having a good time. But then Life magazine got involved. A photographer named Barney Peterson snapped a now iconic photo of a drunk biker sitting on his motorcycle surrounded by broken beer bottles. The kicker? Many claim the photo was staged, with bottles deliberately arranged around the biker for dramatic effect. When Life published it with sensationalist coverage, America collectively lost its shit. Suddenly, motorcyclists were dangerous outlaws threatening decent society. The fallout was immediate. This single weekend transformed the public image of motorcyclists from returning war heroes to dangerous hooligans. The American Motorcyclist Association allegedly responded by stating that 99% of motorcyclists were law-abiding citizens, and only 1% caused trouble. Whether they actually said this is disputed, but the 1%er label stuck and was ironically embraced by clubs like the Hells Angels, who wore 1% patches with pride. Hollywood couldn't resist the narrative. In 1953, The Wild One, starring Marlon Brando, hit theaters, loosely based on the Hollister events. When asked what he's rebelling against, Brando's character Johnny famously responds, "What do you got?" The film cemented the outlaw biker image in American culture forever.
Tell me what that means, BRMC. What does it mean?
Black Rebels Motorcycle Club.
Isn't that cute? Hey, Johnny, what are you rebelling against?
What do you got?
The real legacy of Hollister wasn't the actual events, which were relatively tame, but how they were portrayed. This single weekend created the template for outlaw motorcycle culture and moral panic about bikers that persists to this day. The mythology became more powerful than reality. Decades later, Hollister eventually embraced its biker history, establishing an annual rally that draws thousands. The town realized that instead of running from its notorious past, it could profit from it. The modern event is family-friendly, heavily policed, and pumps millions into the local economy.
Hollister City Council unanimously voted Tuesday night in favor of bringing back the biker rally for 2025, an event greatly missed by the community.
What makes Hollister fascinating isn't just what happened, but how a relatively minor incident, amplified by media hysteria, created an entire cultural archetype. Without Hollister, there might never have been the romanticized outlaw biker image that influenced everything from fashion to music to later, actual organized biker gangs who modeled themselves after the reputation created by a magazine photo. While Hollister created the outlaw biker image, Our Next Massacre showed just how dark that world could really get when the blood started flowing for real. Number 9. Charlotte Independence Day Massacre, 1979. July 4th, 1979. While most Americans were busy with barbecues and fireworks, Charlotte, North Carolina became the setting for what locals would call the city's worst mass killing. The Outlaws Motorcycle Club, already making a name for themselves across the country, were about to add another bloody chapter to their reputation with a massacre that sent shockwaves through both the criminal underworld and law enforcement. The Outlaws Clubhouse sat in a working-class neighborhood, an unassuming converted house where members gathered to drink, party, and conduct business. That Independence Day, while the rest of the city celebrated freedom, 5 people inside that clubhouse would lose theirs permanently. The victims weren't random. This was an internal cleansing, a brutal reminder of what happens when you cross the wrong people in the outlaw biker world. The massacre unfolded with cold efficiency. Around midnight, as July 4th was coming to a close, specific members were targeted in what investigators would later determine was a planned execution. Witnesses in the neighborhood reported hearing what they thought were leftover fireworks. Instead, They were gunshots systematically ending lives inside the clubhouse walls.
My name's Ron Jarrett. I was a police officer back in the days when the outlaw motorcycle gangs had a killing at the clubhouse on Allen Street. I was called by my supervisor, sergeant, who advised me 5 people had died, had been killed. I thought he was kidding me, so I hung up on him. Then he called me back again. He told me he was serious.
What made this incident particularly chilling wasn't just the body count, it was the methodology. Each victim was shot multiple times at close range. This wasn't a heated brawl that got out of hand. This was calculated, premeditated, the kind of killing that sends a message. Police found empty beer cans scattered around corpses, suggesting the victims had been relaxing, maybe even celebrating the holiday when death came knocking. The motives behind the Charlotte massacre reveal the complex internal politics of outlaw motorcycle clubs. According to investigators who spent years piecing together the story, the bloodshed stemmed from suspicions of members cooperating with law enforcement, the cardinal sin in outlaw culture. There were also rumors of missing drug money, territory disputes, and personal vendettas. The truth, as is often the case with closed criminal organizations, remained murky, with multiple overlapping reasons for the bloodshed. The aftermath revealed how deeply entrenched the outlaws' code of silence was. Despite 5 people being gunned down in cold blood, witnesses vanished. People who knew things suddenly developed amnesia when police questioned them. The blue wall of silence has nothing on the leather wall of silence that surrounds these clubs. For months, investigators hit dead end after dead end.
Talking with people and stuff like that. Found a mess of people killed. It's pretty sad. All of them appeared to have been sleeping. There were a bunch of guns on the pool table. And then, of course, the 5 bodies right inside the house itself, 4 inside and 1 outside.
What makes this massacre particularly significant in outlaw motorcycle club history is how it represented a turning point in law enforcement approaches to these organizations. Before Charlotte, many police departments viewed biker clubs as nuisances, rowdy, violent sometimes, but primarily threats to themselves. After Charlotte, federal agencies began viewing them as organized crime enterprises worthy of RICO investigations and dedicated task forces. The Charlotte massacre also highlighted the evolution of outlaw motorcycle clubs, from the rebellious but relatively disorganized groups from the Hollister era to sophisticated criminal organizations with hierarchies, territories, and business interests worth killing to protect. By 1979, clubs like the Outlaws weren't just weekend warriors raising hell. They were coordinated criminal enterprises with fingers in everything from drugs to prostitution to weapons trafficking. Perhaps most disturbing about the Charlotte massacre was how quickly it faded from public consciousness. While 5 people murdered anywhere would typically generate sustained coverage and outrage, the deaths of bikers at the hands of other bikers was treated almost as natural selection. Dangerous people living dangerous lives, meeting predictably violent ends. The media coverage, while initially intense, quickly dissipated, reflecting society's ambivalence about violence within criminal subcultures. The law enforcement response was another story entirely. Behind the scenes, the Charlotte massacre became a case study for how to infiltrate and prosecute outlaw motorcycle clubs. Undercover operations increased, electronic surveillance expanded. Within a few years, multiple outlaws chapters across the country faced unprecedented legal pressure directly linked to investigative techniques developed following Charlotte. Internal club executions were one thing, but when club warfare erupted in broad daylight at a public venue, the biker world would reach new levels of notoriety. Number 8. Father's Day Massacre, 1984.
The fight began in the hotel car park, where members of the British Motorcycle Club had organized a party to celebrate Australia's Father's Day, and had turned the normally quiet suburb into a battleground. It's still not clear how the fight began, but police say 2 rival motorcycle gangs arrived at the hotel and began fighting, with rifles, shotguns, baseball bats, and knives. One of those killed was a 14-year-old girl selling raffle tickets. The shooting was still going on as the first of a dozen ambulances arrived. It stopped briefly to allow paramedics and ambulance men
Sunday, September the 2nd, 1984, Father's Day in Australia. While most dads were opening presents and enjoying family barbecues, the parking lot of the Viking Tavern in Milperra, a Sydney suburb, was about to become a battlefield. The Father's Day Massacre, also called the Milperra Massacre, would go down as the bloodiest biker conflict in Australian history, leaving 7 dead, including 1 innocent bystander, and forever changing how Australians viewed outlaw motorcycle clubs. This wasn't some spontaneous bar fight that got out of hand. This was a planned showdown between the Bandidos and Comancheros, 2 heavyweight clubs with serious beef. The roots of this conflict ran deep. Most of the Bandidos involved had originally been Comancheros, who'd broken away after clashing with the club's founder and self-styled Supreme Commander, William Jock Ross, a Scottish immigrant who ran the Comancheros like a military unit with himself as the unquestioned dictator. When tensions boiled over in 1983, a second Comanchero chapter formed in Sydney City under Anthony Snoddy Spencer. Jock Ross wasn't having it. In his mind, there could only be one Comanchero chapter with him at the top. But Snoddy and his boys weren't backing down. The split escalated when the breakaway chapter patched over to become Australia's first Bandidos chapter, bringing international backing to what had been a local power struggle.
Splitting the club, it turns out, would end up leading to the Milperra Massacre.
Yeah, but you couldn't see that at the time, could you?
For months, tensions simmered, clubhouses were fortified, weapons stockpiled. Members stopped riding alone. It was a powder keg waiting for a spark. That spark came on August 10th, 1984, during a phone call between Jock Ross and Snoddy Spencer. Threats were made, challenges issued, war was declared. The only question was where and when the inevitable bloodshed would happen. The Viking Tavern motorcycle swap meet on Father's Day provided the answer. Word spread that both clubs would be there. The Comancheros arrived first, about 30 strong, armed with bats, chains, machetes, and hidden firearms. When approximately 20 Bandidos rolled up minutes later, women and children were still present, innocently browsing motorcycle parts.
What I saw were deliberate actions. They went there armed, they knew what was going to happen, they were waiting for it to happen. They could hardly be surprised when it did happen.
And innocent people like yourself got caught up in their war.
Many, many innocent people.
What happened next looked like something out of a war zone, not suburban Sydney. Someone shouted, "Here they come," and all hell broke loose. The first shots fired changed everything. What might have been a typical brawl turned into a full-blown firefight. Club members who'd expected to use their fists, or maybe chains, suddenly pulled out concealed weapons. In just 8 brutal minutes, 7 people lay dead or dying. The casualties told the story: 4 Comancheros, 2 Bandidos, and the true tragedy. Leanne Walters, a 14-year-old girl who took a stray bullet to the face while hiding behind a car. She'd just come to the swap meet with her father, completely uninvolved with either club. Her death particularly horrified the Australian public and turned any remaining romantic notions about bikers into revulsion.
The year is 1984, and Australia's most violent bikie war is brewing. Leanne Walters is 15 years old and about to become the innocent face of the Milperra Massacre. She's bought her dad a Father's Day present and is on her way to see him after she looks around the bike swap meeting in the car park of the Viking Tavern. But Leanne never gets to see her dad on Father's Day. She's gunned down in the battle between the notorious Comancheros, led by Jock Ross, and the newly formed Bandidos, led by Snoddy Spencer. It remains the world's worst single outbreak of bikie violence.
When police arrived, they found a scene of chaos. Blood-soaked bikers sprawled across the parking lot, discarded weapons, screaming witnesses, and shell casings everywhere. 28 bikers were arrested on the spot. The immediate aftermath looked like a battlefield triage center, with paramedics working frantically to save the wounded while officers tried to secure what had instantly become Australia's largest crime scene. The legal consequences were unprecedented. Eventually, 31 men were charged with murder, leading to what was then the largest murder trial in Australian history. It stretched on for almost 2 years. The courtroom had to be specially reinforced with bulletproof glass. The cost to taxpayers ran into the millions. In the end, most were convicted of manslaughter rather than murder. Sentences ranged from 6 to 14 years, with both club presidents, Ross and Spencer, receiving the heaviest penalties. When the dust settled, over 1,000 years of combined prison sentences had been handed down. The Father's Day massacre transformed Australia's legal and cultural landscape. New anti-gun laws were fast-tracked. Police formed specialised task forces focused exclusively on outlaw motorcycle clubs. The public's perception of bikers shifted overnight from rebellious free spirits to dangerous criminal gangs. Political pressure mounted for crackdowns that continue to this day, with Australia now having some of the world's strictest anti-bikies laws. What's particularly haunting about the Milperra massacre is how mundane the setting was. This wasn't some remote location. It was a suburban pub parking lot on a Sunday morning, with families present. The everyday setting made the extreme violence even more shocking. One moment people were checking out motorcycle parts, the next they were diving for cover from flying bullets. While Australian bikers were making headlines with public shootouts, up north in Canada, the Hells Angels were about to show that sometimes your deadliest enemies are wearing the same patch as you. Number 7. Lennoxville Massacre, 1985. March 24th, 1985. A late winter chill hung in the air as 5 Hells Angels from the Laval chapter rolled up to the Sherbrooke chapter clubhouse in Lennoxville, Quebec. They thought they were heading to a party. Instead, they were riding straight into an ambush that would become one of the most notorious internal purges in outlaw biker history. The Lennoxville Massacre wasn't about territory or rivalries with enemy clubs. This was family business, Hells Angels killing their own. The Sherbrooke, Montreal, and Halifax chapters had reached a breaking point with their Laval brothers. The North chapter boys had developed a reputation that was bad even by Hells Angels standards. These weren't just tough guys. They were wild cards, unpredictable junkies who couldn't keep their shit together. The 5 Laval members, Laurent Langlais, Viau, Jean-Guy Brutus, Geoffrion, Jean-Pierre Matt Le Crosseur, Mathieu, Michel Willie Meyrand, and Guy-Louis Chop, Adam, had no clue what was waiting for them when they parked their bikes. The moment they walked through the door, they were jumped, stripped of their colors, and beaten. One by one, they were led to the basement and executed with shots to the head. No mercy, no hesitation, just cold elimination of a problem. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment thing. The cleanup had been meticulously planned. The killers wrapped the bodies in sleeping bags, weighed them down with dumbbells and concrete blocks, and dumped them in the St. Lawrence River. For weeks, the official story was that the missing bikers had simply gone on a drug run. But rivers don't keep secrets forever. When spring thaw came, a fisherman spotted one of the sleeping bags that had floated to the surface, kicking off an investigation that would eventually bring down multiple Hells Angels chapters.
And but by 1982, that attitude had somehow changed. In 1985, they were involved in such high-level drug dealers with such groups as the West End Gang and the Mafia, groups that require professionalism from their business associates, that they basically decide we have to decide our future here. If we're going to grow and become the businessman we want to be, we have to get rid of this whole unruly aspect as part of our group. That was basically the motive behind the Lennoxville Purge. It was a time for them to get rid of their unruly members. Those unruly members had basically created very complicated debt with a group called the West End Gang, and this whole thing that transpired on March 24th, 1985 was a settling of all those accounts.
Why go to such extremes against your own brothers? The reasons: mixed business with personal beef. The Laval boys had been hitting the product too hard, stealing from the club's own drug supply and developing serious addiction problems. They'd become unpredictable, a major liability in an organization that, despite its wild reputation, actually prizes control and discipline. There were also rumors they'd kept money that should have gone to the club and had pissed off Frank Junie Ryan, a powerful local gangster with connections to Montreal's West End Gang. When Ryan was later murdered, some Laval members reportedly planned revenge bombings without getting proper clearance from higher-ups. In the strictly hierarchical world of the Hells Angels, that's a fatal mistake. The club's leadership decided the entire chapter needed to be taught a lesson, and 5 members would serve as examples. The aftermath of Lennoxville sent shockwaves through the entire Hells Angels organization. The message was crystal clear. No one is untouchable, not even patch holders. The colors on your back won't save you if you become a liability to the club. Some surviving Laval members were allowed to transfer to other chapters, but only after proving their loyalty all over again. Police eventually arrested 19 Hells Angels for the murders. The trials dragged on for years, with most eventually pleading guilty to reduced charges of manslaughter. Many got sentences as short as 5 years, a bargain considering 5 men had been executed gangland style. What's especially chilling about the Lennoxville massacre is how it revealed the corporate, almost clinical side of outlaw biker violence. This wasn't a bar brawl gone wrong or a spontaneous shootout. This was a board meeting that ended with 5 terminations, permanent ones. The Hells Angels were showing that beneath the freedom-loving rebel image was an organization willing to eliminate its own members with the cold calculation of any major crime syndicate. The massacre also marked a turning point in how Canadian law enforcement approached the Hells Angels. Before Lennoxville, many cops still viewed bikers as disorganized thugs. After recovering 5 executed bodies from a river, that perception changed permanently. Police realized they were dealing with a sophisticated criminal organization willing to enforce internal discipline through the most extreme means possible. For the average Canadian, the Lennoxville massacre ripped away any remaining romantic notions about biker culture. These weren't just tough guys who liked leather and choppers. They were calculated killers who executed their own friends. The public was horrified, and political pressure to crack down on motorcycle clubs intensified. The Hells Angels, in their own twisted way, emerged stronger from the bloodshed. The club demonstrated its willingness to enforce discipline at any cost. Surviving members got the message loud and clear: follow the rules or end up in the river. The incident solidified the club's fearsome reputation and showed potential rivals that the Angels wouldn't hesitate to use extreme violence even against their own. Imagine what they'd do to enemies. Just as the echoes of Lennoxville were fading, Europe was about to experience its own unprecedented explosion of biker violence that would make previous conflicts look like playground scuffles. Number 6. Great Nordic Biker War, 1994 to 1997.
11 to 14 deaths, 97 wounded. I mean, it was a very serious war. They had a shootout in an international airport. They were shooting rockets into each other's clubhouses. And what you have to understand, like people say, well, there's no guns in Europe. You're correct. There are no guns in Europe. You just can't go in and buy guns like you can here in the United States. But they have something different than we have. They have local militias. On the outside of town, the local militias have armories where they keep the rocket launchers, the machine guns.
When people think of Scandinavia, they usually picture peaceful social democracies with stellar healthcare and IKEA furniture. Not battlefields where bikers were hunting each other with anti-tank weapons. But from 1994 to 1997, Denmark, Sweden, Norway and Finland became the setting for the bloodiest motorcycle club war Europe had ever seen, with the Hells Angels and Bandidos turning picturesque Nordic streets into war zones. This wasn't just a couple of bar fights and the occasional shooting. The Great Nordic Biker War featured military-grade hardware, car bombs, grenade attacks, and assassinations that left 11 dead and nearly 100 wounded. It played out like a full-scale military campaign, complete with territory maps, strategic planning, and escalating weapon technology. The escalation got so extreme that at one point members were stealing anti-tank rockets from Swedish military armories to use on rival clubhouses. To understand how shit got this crazy, we need to rewind to the late 80s. The Hells Angels had established a foothold in Scandinavia by patching over a local club called Bullshit MC in Denmark. Followed by expansions into other Nordic countries, they essentially had a monopoly on the outlaw biker scene in the region, which meant control of lucrative drug trafficking, protection rackets, and the strip club business. That monopoly got challenged when the Bandidos, eager to expand their international reach beyond America and Australia, moved into the region in 1993, absorbing a club called Undertaker's MC in Denmark. Almost overnight, the Angels' exclusive control of Scandinavia was threatened, and both clubs began aggressively recruiting and opening new chapters across the region. The war officially kicked off on April 26, 1994, when 4 Undertakers, soon to become Bandidos members, walked into a nightclub in Copenhagen and gunned down the president of the Hells Angels MC Copenhagen. From that moment, any hope of peaceful coexistence died in a hail of bullets. Both sides began systematically targeting each other, and the violence quickly spiraled beyond anything Europe had seen from biker gangs. What made this conflict uniquely terrifying was the military precision and escalating firepower. These weren't just angry bikers taking potshots at each other after too many beers. These were calculated attacks with increasingly sophisticated weapons. When one side used handguns, the other responded with shotguns. Shotguns were countered with assault rifles. And when those weren't enough, they moved on to remote-controlled bombs, anti-tank missiles, and car bombs. The most infamous attack came on October 6, 1996, when someone fired an anti-tank rocket at the Hells Angels clubhouse in Copenhagen. The rocket, stolen from a Swedish military armory, blew through the clubhouse wall, but fortunately didn't kill anyone. 2 weeks later, another stolen anti-tank rocket was fired at the Bandidos headquarters near Copenhagen. The escalation had reached literal military proportions. Cities across Scandinavia were gripped by fear as the violence spilled into public spaces. In Helsinki, a Bandidos member was shot in the head at the airport. In Norway, a car bomb meant for Bandidos members exploded in a prison parking lot. In Denmark, a Hells Angels member was executed with a shotgun while sitting in his car at a traffic light. The general public, unused to this level of violence in their peaceful societies, demanded action. The Nordic governments responded by passing some of the strictest anti-gang laws in Europe. Denmark banned motorcycle clubs from owning or renting property. Norway gave police expanded powers to monitor and infiltrate clubs. Sweden cracked down on the illegal weapons trade. Finland strengthened its organized crime statutes. Police across the region coordinated their efforts, sharing intelligence and conducting simultaneous raids on clubhouses. The pressure eventually became too much, even for these hardened organizations. On September 25, 1997, representatives from both clubs met in Copenhagen and signed a peace agreement. But by then, the damage was done. 11 people dead, 96 wounded, and Scandinavian society forever changed. The pristine image of peaceful Nordic countries had been shattered by bikers wielding military hardware on suburban streets. The war transformed how European law enforcement approached outlaw motorcycle clubs. Before, they had been seen primarily as rowdy troublemakers. After watching them deploy anti-tank weapons and car bombs, police across Europe began treating them as serious organized crime threats. Europol created specialized divisions focused solely on monitoring and disrupting biker gangs. The attitudes hardened further when it became clear these weren't just Nordic clubs fighting local battles. They were international organizations with chapters around the world that could move members, weapons, and resources across borders. While Scandinavia was counting its dead, across the Atlantic another biker war was just heating up, one that would last longer and claim far more lives than any motorcycle club conflict in history. Number 5. Quebec Biker War, 1994 to 2002. If the Nordic Biker War was a hurricane of violence, the Quebec Biker War was a grinding, methodical campaign of extermination that dragged on for nearly a decade. From 1994 to 2002, the streets of Montreal and Quebec City turned into killing fields as the Hells Angels and Rock Machine, later backed by the Bandidos, fought a war that would ultimately claim over 160 lives and create a legacy of violence that haunts Canadian organized crime to this day. This wasn't your typical biker beef over respect or territory. This was a calculated business dispute over one of the most lucrative drug markets in North America. Quebec in the mid-90s was experiencing a boom in the illegal drug trade, particularly cocaine. The province's strategic location, with access to major ports and the US border, made it a smuggler's dream. Millions, potentially billions, in drug money were up for grabs, and the Hells Angels wanted all of it. The Angels had been in Quebec since 1977, when they patched over a local club called the Popeyes. By the early 90s, they had consolidated their hold on most of Montreal's drug trade, but one organization stood in their way: the Rock Machine, a smaller local club formed in 1986 that controlled a significant piece of the downtown drug scene. The Rock Machine might have been smaller, but they weren't pushovers. They formed alliances with street gangs and established a reputation for ruthlessness that made them dangerous opponents. The war officially kicked off on July 13, 1994. when a Rock Machine-affiliated drug dealer was shot dead in Montreal. The Angels Montreal chapter president, Maurice Mom Boucher, had allegedly decided the time had come to eliminate all competition and establish complete control over Quebec's drug trade. What followed was a systematic campaign of violence that would transform how Canada viewed and policed outlaw motorcycle clubs. What set this conflict apart wasn't just its duration or body count, but its cold efficiency. This wasn't about biker honor or spontaneous bar fights. This was business, a corporate takeover written in blood. Both sides created hit squads, whose sole purpose was to eliminate rival members. The Hells Angels elite murder crew, the Nomads, became particularly notorious. Led by Boucher himself, the Nomads were a special chapter created specifically to wage war against the Rock Machine, with no territorial responsibilities, just killing. The level of violence was unprecedented in Canadian history. Car bombs became commonplace. Assassinations occurred in broad daylight. Both sides used sophisticated surveillance, counter-surveillance, and intelligence gathering. They had informants in police departments, correctional facilities, and government offices. The conflict turned Montreal into a city where wearing the wrong colors in the wrong neighborhood could get you killed. Perhaps most disturbing was how the violence routinely claimed innocent lives. In August 1995, an 11-year-old boy, Daniel Desrochers, was killed by shrapnel from a car bomb intended for a Rock Machine member. His death horrified Quebec society and became a turning point in public opinion. Suddenly, this wasn't just bikers killing bikers, it was a threat to everyone's safety. 4 years later, prison guard Diane Levine and correctional officer Pierre Rondeau were murdered on Boucher's orders, further proving that no one was off limits in this war. The Quebec government responded with overwhelming force. They established Operation Wolverine, later renamed Operation Carcajou, a joint forces operation that combined resources from municipal police, provincial police, and the RCMP. When that wasn't enough, they created the Wolverine Squad, a specialized unit with unprecedented powers to investigate and prosecute outlaw bikers. The crown jewel of their efforts was Bill C-95, known as the anti-gang legislation, which created new criminal offenses specifically targeting organized crime. The Rock Machine, despite being smaller, proved surprisingly resilient. In 1997, they allied themselves with the Bandidos, giving them international backing. But the Hells Angels had the advantage of numbers, resources, and a more established organization. They systematically targeted Rock Machine leadership, businesses, and drug operations. By 2000, the balance had tipped decisively in the Angels' favor. The war finally ended in 2002, not through a peace agreement, but through near-complete victory for the Hells Angels. The Rock Machine had been decimated, with many members dead, imprisoned, or in witness protection. The Bandidos' attempt to establish themselves in Quebec had largely failed. The Angels emerged as the dominant force in Quebec's criminal underworld, but at a tremendous cost.
From the grave, Danny Kane finally exacts revenge on the Hells Angels. May 5th, 2002. The jury finds Mom Boucher guilty of the prison guard murders. Life sentence, minimum 25 years. 25 years before being eligible for parole.
I got a phone call by one of the leading investigators, and they said, we got him. And the knees just about buckled, and I got a little teary-eyed, and I'm not shy to say that, big guy like that. I felt good. It was tears of joy.
The legacy of the Quebec Biker War extends far beyond the immediate conflict. It transformed Canadian law enforcement's approach to outlaw motorcycle clubs. New legal tools, investigative techniques, and interagency cooperation models developed during the conflict are still used today. It also changed public perception of bikers from romanticized rebels to dangerous organized criminals. As the Quebec War finally cooled down, back in the southern United States, the Hells Angels were about to demonstrate their willingness to execute multiple members at once, proving that the Lennoxville massacre wasn't just a one-time event. Number 4. Hells Angels Mesa Massacre, 2001. October 27, 2001. Mesa, Arizona. While most Americans were still reeling from the 9/11 attacks, members of the Hells Angels were gathered for what should have been a typical weekend of partying. But by sunrise the next day, 5 men would be dead in what law enforcement would later call one of the most calculated acts of internal club violence since Lennoxville. The Casa Buttercup was a nondescript stucco house in a working-class Mesa neighborhood that served as an unofficial clubhouse for local Hells Angels members. Nothing about its appearance suggested that it would become the scene of a bloodbath that would shock even hardened law enforcement veterans. That Saturday night, around a dozen Angels gathered for what witnesses later described as a disciplinary meeting. Biker code for something going seriously wrong within the club's ranks. The targets were 5 members who had allegedly violated club rules in ways that couldn't be forgiven, skimming from drug profits, talking to law enforcement, and showing disrespect to senior members. What made this massacre particularly chilling was its methodical execution. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment brawl that spiraled out of control. According to court documents, the 5 members were called to the house one by one throughout the evening, each unaware that the others had been summoned. As each man arrived, he was taken to a back bedroom where several senior members were waiting. There, they were confronted with their alleged violations before being executed with shots to the head. The bodies were then wrapped in tarps and plastic sheeting that had been prepared in advance, clear evidence of premeditation. The killers had even brought cleaning supplies to remove blood evidence afterward. The plan unraveled when a neighbor called police after hearing what she thought were firecrackers. When officers responded to the noise complaint, they found the house suspiciously quiet. After obtaining a warrant based on a blood trail visible from outside, they discovered the grisly scene, 5 bodies carefully wrapped and staged for disposal, and club members in the process of cleaning up evidence. The Mesa Massacre exposed the ruthless internal discipline of outlaw motorcycle clubs to a nation that had previously viewed bikers primarily as rowdy rebels rather than organized criminal enterprises. It demonstrated that the Lennoxville killings in Canada weren't an aberration, but part of a pattern of brutal self-policing within these organizations. The calculated nature of the killings, executed over several hours with clear advance planning, shocked even veteran investigators familiar with biker violence. The aftermath saw the arrests of 7 Hells Angels members on first-degree murder charges. Unlike many biker prosecutions that end in plea bargains or acquittals due to witness intimidation, this case resulted in 5 convictions and lengthy prison sentences. The physical evidence was simply too overwhelming to overcome, and the club's notorious code of silence cracked when 2 junior members agreed to testify in exchange for reduced sentences. For law enforcement, the Mesa Massacre provided unprecedented insight into the Hells Angels' internal disciplinary procedures. Court testimony revealed a formal process for handling violations that included investigations, hearings by senior members, and graduated punishments ranging from fines to death. This level of organization reinforced federal authorities' classification of the Hells Angels as a sophisticated criminal enterprise rather than simply a group of motorcycle enthusiasts. The national media largely overlooked the Mesa killings as the country remained focused on terrorism in the wake of 9/11. This relative lack of coverage allowed the Hells Angels to avoid the kind of nationwide scrutiny that had followed other high-profile biker violence. Nevertheless, within law enforcement circles, the Mesa Massacre became a case study in the internal dynamics of outlaw motorcycle clubs and led to increased surveillance of club activities across the country. For the Hells Angels organization, the massacre had mixed consequences. While it reinforced their fearsome reputation and likely strengthened internal discipline, the resulting prosecutions dealt a serious blow to their Arizona operations. The chapter never fully recovered, and rival clubs moved in to fill the power vacuum in the regional drug trade. While the Hells Angels were handling their internal affairs with lethal efficiency in Arizona, across the desert in Nevada, they were about to clash with their most hated rivals in a casino showdown that would play out in front of hundreds of witnesses. Number 3. River Run Riot, 2002.
The notorious Hells Angels biker gang descends on a desert casino. Inside, over 100 members of their sworn enemies. the Mongols.
The Mongols wanted to challenge the Hells Angels for their position in the biker world, outlaw motorcycle gang world. And so to have a group of 30 or 40 Hells Angels, immediately we knew something was terribly wrong.
April 27th, 2002, Laughlin, Nevada. A desert town 90 miles south of Las Vegas, known for its casinos, Colorado River recreation, and one of the biggest motorcycle rallies in the country. By 2:15 a.m., the casino floor of Harrah's Laughlin would look like a war zone. Blood pooling on the carpets, overturned slot machines, and 3 bikers dead in what would become known as the River Run riot. The Laughlin River Run had been going strong since 1983, growing from a humble gathering of 426 bikers to a massive event drawing over 70,000 riders. The 2002 rally was in full swing, with bikers from across the country filling the hotels, bars, and casinos. Among them were 2 groups with a long history of mutual hatred, the Hells Angels and the Mongols. The beef between these clubs ran deep and nasty. The Mongols had formed in the late 60s in East LA, primarily recruiting Hispanic members who weren't welcome in the white-dominated Hells Angels. By the early 2000s, the Mongols had become one of the most aggressive challengers to Hells Angels supremacy, particularly in Southern California. Both clubs had been expanding their chapters across the Southwest, putting them on an inevitable collision course. Harrah's Laughlin had become the unofficial Hells Angels headquarters during the River Run. About 60 Angels had rooms there, many staying on the same floor. Unknown to them, approximately 30 Mongols had also checked into the hotel. Whether this was deliberate provocation or a booking mistake remains disputed, but the stage was set for disaster. 2 enemy clubs, hundreds of miles from their usual territories, suddenly sharing the same casino. The fuse was lit when a group of Mongols walked into the casino and spotted Hells Angels at the bar. According to witness accounts, words were exchanged. Then a Mongol member shoved a Hells Angel. Within seconds, the situation exploded. Knives came out, chairs were smashed, fists flew. The casino floor erupted into all-out warfare. Casino security footage later showed just how chaotic the scene became. Bikers fought with knives, wrenches, and whatever they could grab. Innocent bystanders fled in terror. Slot machines were knocked over as the battle spread across the gambling floor. In one corner, Hells Angel Jeremy Bell was stabbed multiple times. In another, Mongols member Anthony Barrera was shot. Outside the casino entrance, Hells Angel Robert Tumulty was fatally stabbed. 3 men dead, at least a dozen seriously injured, in under 3 minutes.
The Angels quickly filed into the casino, some of them with weapons ready. Before long, the Mongols and Angels confront each other. Heated words mixed with angry stares. And in a flash, all hell breaks loose.
The casino's surveillance system captured much of the violence, providing prosecutors with unprecedented evidence. Police responded in force, but by then the riot had largely burned itself out. Officers arrested dozens of bikers and secured the casino, but the damage was done. The 3 fatalities, 2 Hells Angels and 1 Mongol, ensured this would go down as one of the deadliest biker conflicts on American soil. What made the River Run riot unique wasn't just its body count, but its setting and aftermath. This wasn't a clash in some remote location or club territory. It happened in a major casino filled with hundreds of civilian witnesses and state-of-the-art security cameras. The violence erupted under the bright lights of the gambling floor, with elderly slot players and cocktail waitresses diving for cover as bikers tried to kill each other. The public nature of the conflict meant there was no controlling the narrative. America saw the raw, ugly reality of biker violence plastered across their TV screens.
When the dust finally settles, what's left is confusion and bodies. 2 Angels and 1 Mongol lay slain. Many more are badly injured.
Later, there were reports that the gang members who were able to flee carried other members out that had been shot and were injured. I believe that there's actually a higher injury and death.
The legal consequences were severe. Frederick Donahue, a Hells Angels prospect who had been caught on camera stabbing 2 Mongols, one fatally, received a 20-year sentence. 6 other Hells Angels and 1 Mongol eventually pleaded guilty to various charges. But remarkably, most participants escaped serious legal consequences due to conflicting evidence and witness intimidation. Despite dozens being involved in the riot, only a handful ever served significant prison time. For Laughlin and the River Run, the riot marked a permanent change. The rally continued in subsequent years, but under dramatically increased security. Police checkpoints, casino dress codes prohibiting club colors, heavily armed tactical units patrolling the streets. The relaxed atmosphere that had defined the event was replaced by tense vigilance. Attendance dropped as many casual riders decided the heightened police presence wasn't worth the hassle. The River Run riot also changed how casinos throughout Nevada approached motorcycle clubs. Many established explicit policies against wearing club colors or patches on their properties. Security personnel received specialized training in identifying club members and potential conflicts. The gambling industry, having seen how quickly violence could erupt and the damage it could do to their reputation and bottom line, took a hard line against allowing their properties to become battlegrounds. For the clubs themselves, the incident had mixed consequences. The Hells Angels lost 2 members but maintained their dominant position in the biker world. The Mongols, though they lost 1 man, gained credibility for standing their ground against the more numerous Angels. The conflict added another bloody chapter to their mutual hatred, ensuring that tensions between the clubs would remain high for years to come. Law enforcement used the very public nature of the riot to push for expanded powers to monitor and infiltrate motorcycle clubs. The FBI and ATF leveraged public outrage to secure additional resources for their operations, targeting outlaw clubs. Within a year of the River Run riot, both the Mongols and Hells Angels would face major federal investigations, directly linked to the increased scrutiny following Laughlin. The River Run riot showcased the explosive violence of rival clubs in public spaces, but the next massacre would reveal something even more disturbing: the calculated elimination of an entire chapter by their own supposed brothers. Number 2. Shedden Massacre, 2006.
It was here at the Middlesex County Courthouse 6 years ago where 6 men were put on trial in the murders of 8 Bandito bikers. 9 years ago they were killed this month. Today the Ontario Court of Appeal released its decision finally ending the odyssey of the Bandito massacre. 5 of the 6 men who were convicted in the case.
April 8, 2006. A farmer outside the tiny village of Shedden, Ontario, made a grisly discovery: 4 vehicles abandoned in a field with the bodies of 8 men stuffed inside. All were connected to the Bandidos Motorcycle Club. All had been shot execution style. Some had been tortured. None had seen it coming. The Shedden Massacre, also known as the Bandito Massacre, would go down as the worst mass murder in modern Canadian history. What makes this massacre particularly chilling isn't just the body count, it's who pulled the trigger. This wasn't rival clubs going to war. This was Bandidos killing Bandidos, a group of established members systematically wiping out an entire probationary chapter in a single night of calculated butchery. The victims, who became known as the Shedden 8, were lured to their deaths by men wearing the same patch, men who had called them brothers. The roots of this bloodbath lay in the complicated structure of the Bandidos in Canada. The club's international leadership in Texas had granted a charter to a Toronto chapter referred to as the No Surrender Crew. Many had patched over from a Canadian club called the Loners. But from the beginning, the chapter was problematic. They weren't generating enough money, weren't recruiting quality members, and were generally seen as an embarrassment to the Bandidos brand. By early 2006, the US and European Bandidos leadership had had enough. They reportedly ordered Wayne Weiner Kellerstein, a senior member in good standing with the international organization, to pull the patches, strip the Toronto members of their Bandidos membership, but leave them alive. Kellerstein had other ideas. On the night of April 7th, he invited the Toronto chapter to a mandatory meeting at his farm outside Shedden. The men arrived expecting club business as usual. Once inside, they were ambushed by Kellerstein and his loyalists, bound with electrical tape and held captive for hours. One by one, they were led to a barn where they were shot and their bodies loaded into vehicles. The victims, Luis Manny Chopper Raposo, John Boxer Musiedere, Jamie Goldberg Flans, Paul Big Paulie Sinopoli, George 50 Jessam, Frank Bama Salerno, Michael Little Mikey Trotter, and George Crash Kriarakis, ranged from full-patch bandidos to prospects. Some had been with the club for years, others were relative newcomers. None survived the night. The killer's plan fell apart almost immediately. Instead of disposing of the bodies in a way they wouldn't be found, they simply drove the vehicles containing the corpses to a rural location and abandoned them. A local farmer spotted the suspicious vehicles the next morning and called police. Within days, forensic evidence led investigators back to Kellerstein's farm, where they found blood in the barn and other evidence of the killings. What makes the Shedden massacre particularly disturbing is the cold, premeditated nature of the crime. These weren't quick killings in the heat of battle. The victims were held for hours, knowing their former brothers were going to kill them. Some begged for their lives, some tried to bargain, one was even forced to clean the barn floor of his friend's blood before being executed himself. The level of betrayal and calculation exceeds even the notorious Lennoxville massacre.
And we're here again to show you another exhibit from the Bandidos trial. This time we're going to show you a videotape taken at Wayne Kellerstein's farm during the week before 8 Toronto area Bandidos were shot to death.
We have a small problem here. That's what I look there. Oh my fucking good God, it looks like I just climbed out of a fucking hillbilly fucking convention.
That's Wayne Kellerstein, and here we are in his house, and the people you're about to see, 5 of them are the accused in the Bandidos trial. Only Frank Mather is not pictured in this video. Kellerstein is heard saying that he's sleeping somewhere in the house. This is Dwight Mushy, and in the ball cap is Michael Sandom.
Yeah.
And this is Marcelo Aravina.
Yeah, you're beautiful. You're beautiful. Lazy little bastard, but you're fucking beautiful.
And this is Brett Gardner.
Ah, Jesus Christ, on a fucking crutch. What do you do, bro? What do you say?
The trials revealed a dysfunctional organization torn by internal politics and warped power dynamics. Kellerstein emerged as a particularly twisted figure, a man who maintained a bizarre mixture of Nazi memorabilia and Bandidos gear at his farm, who fancied himself a major player in the organization, despite being viewed with contempt by many Bandidos internationally. Testimony described him dancing around his barn between executions, listening to music and drinking beer while his former brothers awaited their turns to die. The motive went beyond simply following orders to pull patches. Evidence suggested Kellerstein wanted to establish himself as the undisputed leader of all Bandidos in Canada. By eliminating the Toronto chapter, he could rebuild the organization under his complete control. There were also rumors that the Hells Angels, the dominant club in Ontario, had pressured Kellerstein to eliminate the Toronto Bandidos to prevent a major club war in the province. The legal aftermath saw 6 men convicted of multiple counts of first-degree murder. Kellerstein, Frank Mather, Brett Gardner, Michael Sandom, a former police officer who had infiltrated the club before going native, Dwight Mushy, and Marcelo Aravina, all received life sentences. The Bandidos organization quickly distanced itself from the killings, claiming Kellerstein had acted without authorization. For the small community of Shedden, population 300, the massacre brought unwanted international attention and permanently altered the town's identity. Local residents, many of whom had never even seen a Bandido before the killings, suddenly found their village's name synonymous with one of Canada's worst mass murders. The Shedden massacre effectively ended the Bandidos' presence in Canada. The organization, which had been trying to establish a foothold to challenge the Hells Angels' dominance, withdrew from the country entirely. The incident also caused soul-searching within outlaw biker culture itself. If members couldn't trust their own brothers not to execute them, what was left of the supposed code of honor that these clubs claimed to live by? While the Shedden massacre showed the deadly reality of internal club politics, the final entry on our list would become the largest and most chaotic biker shootout in American history, turning a family restaurant into a war zone in broad daylight. Number 1. Waco Biker Shooting, 2015. May 17, 2015. A sunny Sunday afternoon at the Twin Peaks restaurant in Waco, Texas. Families were eating lunch. Waitresses in skimpy mountain ranger outfits were serving cold beer. By 12:24 p.m., 9 bikers would be dead, 18 more wounded, and nearly 200 arrested in what would become the deadliest and most controversial motorcycle club conflict in American history. The Waco Biker Shootout wasn't just another case of rival gangs killing each other in some back alley. This was a full-scale firefight in a crowded restaurant beside a busy shopping center in broad daylight, with dozens of civilians caught in the crossfire. It was also a legal disaster that raised serious questions about police tactics, mass arrests, and constitutional rights. Years later, the truth about what really happened at Twin Peaks remains hotly disputed. The setup for disaster began when the Texas Confederation of Clubs and Independents, a motorcycle rights organization, scheduled a regular regional and legislative agendas were typically peaceful affairs attended by various clubs. The Bandidos, as the dominant club in Texas, often had a leadership presence. The problem started when members of the Cossacks MC, a rival club not invited to the meeting, showed up in force and took over the patio area. The Cossacks and Bandidos had been feuding for months over territory and the right to wear Texas bottom rockers on their vests. Several smaller skirmishes had already occurred across the state, raising tensions to the breaking point. Police later claimed they had warned Twin Peaks management about the potential for violence if the meeting went forward. Despite these warnings, the restaurant allowed the gathering to proceed. Meanwhile, law enforcement had positioned nearly 24 officers around the restaurant, including SWAT team members, anticipating trouble. When Bandidos members arrived and found Cossacks controlling the patio, an argument erupted. According to some witnesses, it started over a parking space. Others claimed it began when a Cossack was shoved or had his foot run over. Whatever the spark, the conflict escalated with shocking speed. Someone threw a punch, someone drew a weapon. Within seconds, guns were drawn and the shooting started. The scene descended into total chaos. Bikers fired at each other across the restaurant. Some fled inside for cover, terrifying civilian diners. Others drew knives and began stabbing opponents. Police officers stationed outside opened fire as well, though their exact role in the casualties remains disputed. The entire gunfight lasted just 90 seconds, but the aftermath would stretch on for years.
Cam video, a biker who the Cossacks identified as their own member, Richard Bear Kirschner, can be seen striking others with a chain. A separate police camera shows Kirschner was struck multiple times by the same ammo forensics reports say was used by police. He also had bullet wounds from a .38.
Video plus audio, 2.39 to 2.55. When the shooting stopped, the scene was apocalyptic. Bodies lay scattered across the parking lot and restaurant. The wounded screamed for help. Blood pooled on the pavement. Police moved in, detaining everyone with a motorcycle club connection, even those who had hidden inside to escape the violence. In the end, 9 bikers were dead. 6 Cossacks, 1 Bandido, 1 Scimitar, aligned with the Cossacks, and 1 unaffiliated biker. What followed was one of the most controversial mass arrests in American history. Police rounded up 177 bikers, including many who claimed they had no involvement in the shooting. All were charged with engaging in organized criminal activity. All had bail set at $1 million, and all faced potential life sentences. The mass arrest would later be criticized as a flagrant violation of civil rights, with many detainees held for weeks or months, despite little evidence connecting them personally to any violence. The investigation itself raised serious questions. Police recovered over 150 firearms, plus knives, batons, brass knuckles, and even chains with padlocks. But determining who shot whom proved nearly impossible. Forensic testing was inconsistent. Chain of custody for weapons was questionable. Perhaps most controversially, evidence later emerged suggesting that some of the fatal shots may have come from police rifles, not just biker weapons.
Police interviews with the nearly 200 people arrested that day reveal simmering tensions between the two clubs over power, authority, and what Cossacks members say is a financial shakedown by the rival Bandidos, involving the so-called Confederation of Clubs, or C.
The legal aftermath was a complete disaster for the prosecution. After a grand jury initially indicted 154 bikers, the cases began falling apart. The district attorney who pushed for the mass arrests, Abel Rayner, was voted out of office. His replacement dismissed all remaining cases in 2019. Only one biker ever went to trial, Jake Carrizal, a Bandidos chapter president, and even his case ended in a mistrial. After 4 years of legal proceedings, costing taxpayers millions, not a single conviction resulted from the deadliest biker shootout in American history. For the motorcycle club world, Waco represented a turning point. Many clubs became more security conscious, changing how they organized meetings and being more careful about potential confrontations in public spaces. The incident also accelerated the trend of clubs seeking legal representation proactively, rather than reactively after arrests. Public perception of outlaw clubs hardened further, with the image of bodies in the Twin Peaks parking lot replacing the romanticized notion of free-spirited rebels on motorcycles. Media coverage focused on the criminal elements of club culture rather than brotherhood or riding, cementing the association between motorcycle clubs and organized violence in the public mind.
You can buy yourself a Harley, and you can get yourself a really smoking hot leather jacket, make you a real biker. And it sure doesn't make you a member of the Hells Angels.
Established in 1948, the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club has earned a worldwide reputation for its uncompromising approach to membership. These 15 mandatory rules control every aspect of members' lives, from how they dress to who they talk to. Far from being casual guidelines, these rules are brutally enforced with serious consequences for those who step out of line. Understanding these rules gives us a rare look inside the secretive brotherhood that has maintained its fearsome reputation for over 70 years. Number 15. Strict chain of command.
Right, and you mentioned your leadership style is you would lead from the front, which is unique. You wouldn't ask anyone to go on a mission, you wouldn't go on yourself, correct?
That's absolutely correct. I mean, I was there on the front lines. I think it got me the respect of not only my people, but I think it got me the respect of other clubs.
Every successful organization needs clear leadership, and the Hells Angels are no different. Their military-style chain of command keeps everyone in line and maintains the order that's helped them survive for decades. This isn't just about having bosses, it's about creating a structure where every single member knows exactly where they stand. At the top of each chapter sits the president, the undisputed leader who oversees everything and makes sure rules are followed. Under him is the vice president, who steps up when the president can't be there and helps carry out his orders. The secretary keeps all the records, writing down what happens at meetings and handling the club's paperwork. Money matters fall to the treasurer, who collects dues and manages the club's finances. Perhaps the most visible leader is the sergeant-at-arms, who enforces the rules and keeps everyone in line during meetings and events. This leadership structure isn't just for show. Each rank comes with real power and serious responsibilities. Members must show absolute respect to those above them in the chain, following orders without question or hesitation. Challenging authority or disrespecting leadership can get you in big trouble, maybe even kicked out of the club completely. What makes this system work is that even the leaders have to follow the rules. Having a high rank doesn't put you above the law of the club. Leaders who fail in their duties face consequences just like anyone else. This creates an atmosphere where everyone knows exactly what's expected of them. The strict hierarchy allows for quick decisions when needed and creates a culture where respect for authority becomes second nature. Members understand that this chain of command is what keeps the Hells Angels functioning as the tight brotherhood it's known to be. The structure helps cement their fearsome reputation by ensuring members act as a unified force, rather than individuals doing whatever they want. This rigid command structure touches every aspect of club life, even dictating seemingly personal choices. For example, while the club has been associated with the drug trade, individual members face a strict rule about their own drug use, a rule that might surprise many outsiders. Number 14, no drugs policy.
Drugs?
Well, they were dealing drugs.
But that was one of the Hells Angels rules, though, wasn't it? Not really?
Not really.
Not really, okay.
It might seem surprising that an organization often linked to drug trafficking would ban its members from using drugs, but that's exactly how the Hells Angels operate. Their no drugs policy is strict and simple. Members are forbidden from using hard drugs like heroin, methamphetamine, or cocaine. This rule isn't based on moral concerns, it's purely practical. The reasoning behind this rule is straightforward. Drug use leads to poor judgment and bad decisions. A member high on hard drugs might talk too much, make stupid mistakes, or become unreliable when the club needs them most. Someone with clouded thinking can't be trusted to protect the club's interests or keep its secrets. In an organization where trust is everything, anything that compromises clear thinking is seen as a serious threat. Consequences for breaking this rule are severe. Members caught using or possessing hard drugs face punishment ranging from heavy fines to being suspended or even permanently kicked out of the club. These harsh penalties show just how seriously the Hells Angels take this policy. By keeping drugs out of their internal operations, the club maintains a level of discipline and control that might surprise outsiders. The rule helps ensure members stay focused on club objectives and keeps their loyalty undivided. In an organization constantly under scrutiny from law enforcement, clear-headed members are essential. The drug rule serves another purpose. It helps distinguish between business and personal behavior. While the club may be involved in drug-related activities as an organization, individual members are expected to stay clean and sharp. This separation allows the Hells Angels to function more effectively as a unit, with members who can be counted on to make sound decisions. This seemingly contradictory rule highlights the practical nature of the Hells Angels' internal policies. They don't make rules based on outside moral standards, but on what best serves the organization's continued survival and success. The no drugs policy ensures that even while operating in dangerous territory, members remain disciplined and in control. With clear minds, members can focus on another crucial element of their identity, the motorcycles that give the club its name and serve as powerful symbols of the freedom they represent. Number 13, compulsory motorcycle ownership. At the very heart of the Hells Angels' identity is the motorcycle, specifically the Harley-Davidson. One rule that absolutely cannot be broken is that every member must own and maintain a working Harley-Davidson motorcycle. This isn't just a suggestion, it's a mandatory requirement that's strictly enforced. Failing to own a Harley-Davidson can result in disciplinary action or even expulsion from the club. The motorcycle isn't just transportation, it represents the core of what the Hells Angels stand for. It's a symbol of freedom, rebellion, and the open road lifestyle that defines biker culture. Members take enormous pride in their machines, often spending thousands of dollars customizing and maintaining them. These aren't just vehicles, they're extensions of the riders themselves, reflecting their personality and commitment to the club. The distinctive rumble of Harley engines has become inseparable from the Hells Angels' image, creating an intimidating presence wherever they ride. The club expects members to ride regularly, not just own a bike that sits in the garage. Participation in group rides is essential, especially during official club events and gatherings. The sight and sound of dozens of Harleys riding in formation creates a powerful statement about the club's unity and strength. By making motorcycle ownership compulsory, the Hells Angels ensure that every member literally has skin in the game. The financial investment required to purchase and maintain a Harley-Davidson demonstrates commitment to the lifestyle. It separates casual enthusiasts from those truly dedicated to the biker way of life. This rule also serves a practical purpose. It ensures that all members can participate in rides and events, which are central to club activities. The shared experience of riding creates bonds between members that strengthen the brotherhood. There's a unique camaraderie that develops among those who face the elements and the dangers of the road together. The motorcycle requirement stands as one of the most visible symbols of membership. When the public sees a Hells Angel, they expect to see him on a Harley-Davidson. This consistency has helped cement the club's image in popular culture and maintains a tradition that dates back to their founding in 1948. Those Harleys don't just sit in garages either. They're ridden to countless mandatory meetings and events where attendance isn't optional. It's another unbreakable rule of membership. Number 12. Mandatory meetings and events.
You have a wife, 2 kids.
Good job.
Good job. You're a Teamster, right?
Right.
And now they're telling you you got to move to Minnesota to join this 1% motorcycle gang.
Being a Hells Angel isn't a part-time commitment. The club demands significant time from its members through mandatory meetings and events that no one is allowed to miss without serious consequences. These gatherings are the backbone of club operations and help maintain the tight bonds that hold the brotherhood together. Weekly or bi-weekly church meetings form the foundation of club business. During these sessions, members discuss upcoming events, address internal issues, and make important decisions affecting the chapter. Attendance isn't optional, it's a fundamental obligation of membership. Missing meetings without a legitimate excuse can result in fines or other punishments that increase with repeated absences. Beyond regular meetings, the Hells Angels calendar includes numerous mandatory events throughout the year. These range from charity rides and parties to memorial services honoring fallen brothers. Each member is expected to participate fully, putting club commitments ahead of personal plans or family obligations. These events are taken very seriously. A member who chooses a family vacation over a required club gathering might face disciplinary action. These events serve multiple purposes. First, they strengthen the bonds between members, creating shared experiences that build trust and solidarity. Second, they demonstrate the club's presence and unity to outsiders, including rival clubs. The intimidating sight of Hells Angels riding together in formation sends a powerful message about their strength and cohesion. For members, these mandatory gatherings represent more than mere obligations. They're opportunities to demonstrate loyalty to the brotherhood. By consistently showing up and participating, members prove their dedication to the club and their brothers. This reliability becomes a measure of a member's standing within the organization. The Hells Angels take attendance very seriously. Members typically need to provide advance notice if they cannot attend, and only legitimate reasons like serious illness, work obligations, or family emergencies are accepted. Even then, excessive absences can lead to questioning of a member's commitment. These mandatory meetings and events also serve as a control mechanism, keeping members connected to the club's activities and under the watchful eye of leadership. Regular face-to-face interaction ensures that issues can be addressed quickly and that all members stay informed about club matters. For prospective members, the time commitment represents one of the most challenging aspects of joining the Hells Angels. The club demands priority in members' lives, often above work, family, and other relationships. This hierarchy of loyalty, with the club at the top, separates casual enthusiasts from those truly committed to the Hells Angels' way of life. Many of these important gatherings take place in the clubhouse, a space governed by its own set of strict rules designed to protect the Brotherhood's privacy and maintain order. Number 11. Clubhouse rules. Each Hells Angels chapter maintains a clubhouse that serves as their sanctuary, a place where members can gather away from prying eyes. These spaces aren't just meeting halls, they're the physical heart of the chapter's identity and operations. To protect these important spaces, the club enforces strict rules that members and their rare visitors must follow without question. The clubhouse typically features the club's colors and symbols prominently displayed, along with photos of current and former members, especially those who have died. These spaces often include meeting areas, bars, entertainment spaces, and sometimes sleeping quarters for members who need temporary housing. The atmosphere inside combines the feel of a private club, a fortress, and a shrine to the Hells Angels' legacy. Access control is among the most important clubhouse rules. Outsiders are strictly prohibited unless specifically invited by a full member. Even then, the inviting member must accompany their guest at all times and takes full responsibility for their behavior. This tight control over who enters helps maintain security and prevents unwanted attention from law enforcement or rival clubs. Before important meetings, the space might even be checked for surveillance devices. Inside the clubhouse, fighting between members is absolutely forbidden. While the Hells Angels have a reputation for violence, They keep internal conflicts from erupting into physical altercations inside their sacred space. Disputes must be settled through proper channels, not through personal confrontations that might damage property or brotherhood unity. Stealing from the clubhouse or from fellow members is considered an extreme violation of trust and can result in severe punishment. Members share responsibility for maintaining the clubhouse. Cleaning duties, repairs, security monitoring, and restocking supplies are assigned on a rotating basis. Failing to perform these duties is seen as disrespect for the shared space and fellow members. Everyone is expected to contribute to keeping the clubhouse functioning. During official meetings, phones might be collected to prevent recording, and additional security measures are implemented. These precautions reflect the Hells Angels' emphasis on privacy and their distrust of outside interference. Maintaining the secrecy of club business is paramount, especially in an era of increased surveillance. The clubhouse also serves as a place for ceremonies and traditions, including the initiation of new members and memorial services for those who have died. These spaces hold significant emotional importance for members, containing the shared history and collective memory of the chapter. For members, respecting clubhouse rules demonstrates commitment to the Brotherhood's values. Violations can result in fines, suspension of clubhouse privileges, or more severe punishments. The space represents not just a physical location, but the tangible manifestation of their collective identity. The clubhouse environment, like much of Hells Angels culture, reflects their traditional values, including their unwavering stance on keeping membership exclusively male, another rule that has remained unchanged despite decades of social change. Number 10. No women as full members. Since its founding in 1948, the Hells Angels have maintained one rule without exception: women cannot become full members. Despite societal changes in gender roles over the decades, this male-only membership policy remains absolute, with no signs of changing. The club considers itself a brotherhood in the most literal sense, maintaining a space exclusively for men. This rule reflects the Hells Angels' self-identity as a masculine organization built around traditionally male values. The club views its internal culture and activities as fundamentally incompatible with female membership, preserving what members see as the essential character of their organization. While some motorcycle clubs have admitted women over the years, the Hells Angels have steadfastly refused to change their stance. Though women cannot join as members, they still play significant roles in the Hells Angels ecosystem. Many women are connected to the club as old ladies, the wives, girlfriends, or partners of full members. These women form their own social hierarchy and community adjacent to the main club structure. They often have their own gatherings and support systems while maintaining relationships with members. The term property of, followed by a member's name, is sometimes displayed on a patch worn by these women, which outsiders often misinterpret as suggesting ownership. Within the club culture, this designation serves more as a boundary marker, indicating to other members that a relationship exists that should be respected. Old ladies often attend certain social events, rides, and parties, but they are excluded from official meetings and internal club business. Their presence is particularly notable at public gatherings, where they help present the club's image to the outside world. However, they have no vote in club matters and cannot wear the official death head patch that identifies full members. The male-only membership policy helps maintain the Hells Angels' image as a tough, masculine organization, untouched by the changing gender dynamics of mainstream society. This exclusivity contributes to the mystique and traditional outlaw image the club has cultivated throughout its history. For prospective members, understanding the rigid gender boundary is essential. The Hells Angels make no apologies for this policy and show no interest in changing it to accommodate modern sensibilities. The rule stands as one of the clearest examples of how the club operates according to its own internal value system, regardless of external criticism. Women connected to the Hells Angels understand that they will never have the same status as male members. Their role, while important to the social fabric of the club, remains distinctly separate from the Brotherhood itself. This clear distinction of roles reflects the traditional values that continue to define the organization despite decades of social change in the wider world. The exclusive nature of membership reinforces another core value of the Hells Angels: the absolute loyalty expected from those who are admitted to the inner circle. Number 9. Loyalty above all.
The number one rule of the Hells Angel Code is always back your brothers. I learned that before I even became a member.
When it comes to Hells Angels membership, nothing, absolutely nothing, is more important than loyalty to the club and your brothers. This isn't just a nice ideal, it's the fundamental requirement that shapes every aspect of a member's life. The loyalty expected goes far beyond what most people experience in their everyday relationships or organizations. From the moment a prospect becomes a full member, he's expected to put the club first, before family, before work, before personal interests, and sometimes even before the law. This loyalty means being willing to defend fellow members physically if needed, providing financial support when a brother is struggling, and offering protection against threats from outsiders. When called upon, a member must be ready to drop everything and respond to the club's needs without hesitation. The Hells Angels concept of loyalty includes maintaining complete silence about club business with outsiders. Members are forbidden from discussing internal matters with anyone not in the club, not with police, not with journalists, not even with close family members. This code of silence has helped the organization maintain its mystique and avoid legal consequences despite decades of scrutiny from authorities. Loyalty is tested most severely when members face legal pressure. The Hells Angels have a strict no-snitching policy. Members are expected to accept legal consequences rather than provide information about club activities or implicate fellow members. Those who cooperate with authorities are not only expelled, but may face violent retaliation. The club's motto, "3 can keep a secret if 2 are dead," reflects the seriousness with which they view betrayal. This emphasis on absolute loyalty creates a powerful support system for members. When a Hells Angel faces trouble, whether legal problems, financial hardship, or personal crisis, he can count on his brothers to stand beside him. This mutual support forms a safety net that many members value above all other aspects of club membership. The loyalty requirement extends to how members represent the club in public. They must protect the Hells Angels' reputation and image at all times, avoiding behaviors that might bring negative attention or disrespect to the organization. This representation includes properly displaying club insignia and behaving in ways that reflect the club's values. For those considering membership, the loyalty demand represents perhaps the most significant commitment. Prospects must understand that joining means placing the Hells Angels at the center of their identity and decision-making for as long as they wear the patch. This absolute dedication to the brotherhood forms the foundation upon which all other club rules are built. But this loyalty isn't given freely. It must be earned through a challenging process that tests every aspect of a prospect's character and commitment. Number 8, prospecting period.
Because every time I got a job, you start doing a job, you get a job, a brand new job, and you work it. You're there a week, and he says, "We're leaving Friday for Chicago." And I tell the employer, "Hey, I won't be here Friday," and they went, "See ya."
Before earning the coveted Hells Angels patches and becoming a full member, every candidate must complete a demanding probationary period known as prospecting. This challenging phase tests the individual's commitment, reliability, and worthiness to join the exclusive brotherhood. Far from being a mere formality, the prospecting period represents one of the most rigorous aspects of Hells Angels membership. The journey begins when an existing member sponsors a candidate, vouching for their character and potential value to the club. This sponsorship is not given lightly, as the sponsor puts his own reputation on the line by bringing someone new into the fold. Once accepted as a prospect, the candidate receives a bottom rocker patch indicating their prospective status, but not the full death head insignia worn by members. The prospecting period typically lasts between 6 months and 2 years, though this time frame can vary based on individual performance and chapter practices. During this time, prospects exist in a limbo state, not quite members but no longer outsiders. They must prove themselves worthy through consistent dedication and service to the club. Prospects face a grueling schedule of obligations. They must attend all meetings, rides, and events without exception. When not participating in official activities, they're expected to spend time at the clubhouse, getting to know members and learning club culture. This immersion allows existing members to evaluate the prospect's character and compatibility with the Brotherhood. Service forms a central part of the prospecting experience. Prospects are assigned various tasks, from mundane chores like cleaning the clubhouse and running errands to more significant responsibilities supporting club operations. They might be tasked with motorcycle maintenance, security duties at events, or delivering messages between members. Through these assignments, prospects demonstrate their reliability and willingness to put the club first. Throughout the prospecting period, candidates are closely observed by all full members. Their behavior, attitude, and loyalty are constantly evaluated. Do they complain about assignments? Do they arrive on time? Can they be trusted with sensitive information? Every interaction becomes a test of character and commitment. Prospects have few rights within the club structure. They cannot vote on club matters, must show deference to all full members, and can be dismissed from gatherings when private club business is discussed. This subordinate status serves both to test the prospect's humility and to protect the club's security during the evaluation period. The physical demands can be intense. Prospects might be expected to participate in long rides regardless of weather conditions, demonstrate fighting ability if needed, and show physical toughness in various situations. While the specific challenges vary between chapters, all prospects must prove they possess the physical and mental strength to represent the Hells Angels. Not everyone survives this gauntlet. Many prospects drop out when faced with the extreme time commitment or the subordinate treatment. Others are dismissed for failing to meet expectations or breaking rules. Only those who demonstrate unwavering dedication throughout the entire prospective period earn the right to be voted in as full members. For those who succeed, the transition from prospect to full member represents a profound life change. The new member receives his full patch, including the Death Head logo, and is formally welcomed into the Brotherhood. This moment marks the end of the testing period, but the beginning of a lifetime commitment to the club and its values. Number 7. Financial commitments. After successfully completing the grueling prospecting period, a newly patched member quickly learns that wearing the colors comes with significant financial responsibilities. Money matters in the Hells Angels are taken very seriously, with members expected to contribute regularly to keep the club running smoothly. The most basic financial obligation is paying dues, typically collected monthly or weekly depending on the chapter. These dues aren't optional. They're mandatory payments that help cover clubhouse rent, utilities, legal expenses, and other operating costs. The specific amount varies between chapters, but all members must pay regardless of their personal financial situation. Missing dues payments is considered a serious offense that demonstrates a lack of commitment to the Brotherhood. Beyond regular dues, members often contribute to special funds for specific purposes. Perhaps the most important is the Legal Defense Fund, which provides financial support for brothers facing court cases or legal troubles. Given the club's frequent run-ins with law enforcement, maintaining a healthy legal fund is essential for protecting members when they face charges. Every member is expected to chip in, knowing they might need that same support someday. The financial commitments don't stop there. Members must purchase and maintain their own club-related gear, including the official patches, vests, and other merchandise displaying Hells Angels insignia. These items aren't cheap. The complete set of patches alone can cost hundreds of dollars. Since these items represent the club's identity, members are expected to keep them in good condition and replace them when necessary. Owning and maintaining a Harley-Davidson motorcycle represents another major financial commitment. These bikes aren't just transportation, they're required equipment for membership. With new Harleys costing $15,000 to $40,000 plus customization expenses, the motorcycle alone represents a significant investment. Add in the costs of maintenance, fuel, insurance, and repairs, and the financial burden becomes substantial. Members also face expenses related to attending mandatory events, runs, and gatherings. These often involve travel costs, accommodations, food, and other expenses that can add up quickly, especially for events that last several days. Despite these costs, attendance isn't optional, and financial hardship is rarely accepted as an excuse for missing important club functions. When members face financial difficulties, there's an expectation that they'll find a way to meet their obligations rather than asking for relief. Taking on extra work, selling personal possessions, or making other sacrifices might be necessary to fulfill financial commitments to the club. Those who consistently fail to meet their financial obligations may face disciplinary actions ranging from fines, ironically adding to their financial burden, to suspension or even expulsion in extreme cases. The Hells Angels' strict financial requirements serve several purposes. They ensure the club has resources to operate, they demonstrate members' commitment, and they help maintain the organization's independence from outside influences. These financial obligations are intertwined with the club's visual identity, particularly through the distinctive tattoos and symbols that members proudly display on their bodies. Number 6. Tattoos and symbols.
And one of the Massachusetts members, which he's not a member anymore now, his name is Kevin.
The Hells Angels' identity is visually reinforced through powerful tattoos and symbols that members wear with pride. Far more than just decoration, these markings represent a deep commitment to the club and carry specific meanings that outsiders often don't understand. At the center of Hells Angels' symbolism is the famous Death Head logo, a skull with wings wearing a motorcycle helmet. This trademarked symbol is the club's most recognizable emblem and appears on patches, motorcycles, and as tattoos on members' bodies. Only full members can wear the Death Head, and they protect this symbol fiercely. The club has even pursued legal action against companies or individuals who use their imagery without permission. Many members choose to get Hells Angels tattoos to show their lifelong dedication to the Brotherhood. Common tattoos include AFA, Angels Forever, Forever Angels, 81, representing H and A, the 8th and 1st letters of the alphabet, and various versions of the Death Head logo. These tattoos aren't casual choices, they represent a permanent commitment that can't be easily removed or hidden. The location of tattoos often carries significance within the club. More visible placements like the neck, face, or hands demonstrate a higher level of commitment, since these tattoos can't be concealed in everyday life and may limit other career opportunities. Some tattoos are reserved for members who've reached certain milestones or hold specific positions within the organization. Members must follow strict rules about when and how they display club symbols. The Death Head can only be tattooed on a member after they've been officially patched in, and specific guidelines dictate the size and placement of these tattoos. Unauthorized use of Hells Angels symbols, especially by non-members, is considered extremely disrespectful and can lead to violent confrontations. Former members who leave the club, whether voluntarily or through expulsion, are expected to remove or cover any Hells Angels tattoos. This often involves painful cover-up work or laser removal procedures. Some chapters may forcibly remove tattoos from expelled members, particularly in cases involving severe betrayal or disloyalty. The symbols themselves carry layered meanings within biker culture. The wings represent freedom and the open road, while the skull symbolizes the members' willingness to face death for their brothers. Club-specific variations may include local chapter names, founding dates, or memorials to fallen members. Beyond tattoos, these same symbols appear prominently on members' clothing, creating a distinctive uniform that identifies them to both fellow members and outsiders. The powerful visual impact of Hells Angels symbols is deliberately designed to inspire respect and sometimes fear, serving as a constant reminder of the club's strength and unity. These permanent markings on members' bodies reflect the permanent nature of their commitment to the Hells Angels. Like wedding rings that never come off, these tattoos symbolize a lifelong bond to the Brotherhood. But unlike wedding rings, they can't be easily removed if a member has a change of heart. This permanent commitment extends beyond the skin to include specific rules about what members wear when representing the club. Number 5. Biker attire. The Hells Angels have strict rules about what members wear, particularly when representing the club in public. This dress code isn't just about looking intimidating, it's about showing unity, respect for tradition, and proper representation of the Brotherhood. Every item from head to toe follows specific guidelines that members must follow or face consequences. The centerpiece of Hells Angels attire is the cut, a leather or denim vest that displays the club's patches. The back of this vest features the full three-piece patch, the top rocker with the club name, the center Death Head logo, and the bottom rocker showing the territory or chapter location. Only full members who've completed the prospecting period and been voted in can wear these patches. The front of the cut typically displays smaller patches indicating rank, position, or personal achievements within the club. Some members may have patches showing years of membership, specific roles like treasurer or sergeant at arms, or commemorative patches for major club events they've attended. These patches aren't just sewn on casually. There are specific rules about their placement, size, and condition. Members are expected to keep their patches clean and well maintained as a sign of respect. Damaged or dirty patches reflect poorly on the club and may result in disciplinary action. If a patch becomes too worn, it must be properly replaced rather than allowed to deteriorate. The Death Head logo must be positioned exactly in the center of the back, with the top and bottom rockers placed at precise distances above and below it. Even the stitching must be done properly, usually with heavy-duty thread that won't easily tear away. Beyond the cut, members are expected to dress in ways that project the club's tough image. This typically includes jeans, boots, and often leather jackets for riding. Bandanas or do-rags, heavy rings, chains, and leather gloves complete the look. While there's room for personal style, certain elements are considered essential when representing the club. The jeans are typically blue or black denim, often well worn but never tattered or fashionably ripped. Boots are almost always heavy leather, with steel toes preferred by many members both for protection while riding and for their intimidating appearance. Members must be particularly careful about what brands they wear. Clothing companies associated with rival clubs are strictly forbidden. In some chapters, members are prohibited from wearing items that might be seen as disrespectful to the club's image, such as clothing with political messages not aligned with the group's values. For example, wearing apparel from companies that sponsor rival clubs could result in immediate disciplinary action. Even certain designer brands might be discouraged if they're seen as too fancy or at odds with the rugged biker image. Special events like funerals for fallen brothers, court appearances, or major runs have their own specific dress codes. For funerals, members typically wear clean, formal versions of their club attire as a sign of respect. This might include freshly cleaned cuts, black jeans instead of blue, polished boots, and sometimes white shirts underneath. For court, some chapters require members to dress more conventionally to present a respectable image to judges and juries, possibly removing some of the more intimidating accessories while still maintaining their identity as club members. When riding as a group, uniformity becomes even more important. Members are expected to wear proper riding gear, including helmets in states with helmet laws, despite the stereotype of bikers rejecting such protection. The club values safety during rides and doesn't want unnecessary attention from law enforcement for easily avoidable violations. On long rides, members might be required to wear specific colors or matching accessories to create a unified appearance that emphasizes the club's strength and organization. Weather considerations are addressed in the dress code as well. During hot summer rides, members might remove their heavy leather jackets, but the cut with patches must always remain visible. For cold weather, specific types of riding gloves, face protection, and layered clothing might be recommended or required, but never in a way that obscures the club's patches or identity. The attire rules extend to prospective members as well, though in a more limited way. Prospects wear a bottom rocker indicating their status, but aren't permitted to display the Death Head logo or top rocker until they become full members. This visual difference constantly reminds prospects of their lower status within the hierarchy. Prospects might also be required to wear specific items that visually identify them as not yet full members, reinforcing their position in the club's strict hierarchy. The Hells Angels take their dress code seriously enough that violations can result in disciplinary action. Members who fail to wear proper attire at mandatory events or who disrespect the patches can face consequences ranging from verbal warnings to fines. Repeated violations suggest a lack of respect for the club and its traditions, potentially leading to more serious punishment. Some chapters might impose special cleaning duties or additional responsibilities on members who fail to maintain their attire properly. This careful attention to appearance serves multiple purposes. It builds group identity, creates an intimidating presence, and allows members to instantly recognize each other and their rank. The disciplined approach to club attire reflects a broader commitment to handling all club business with similar precision and attention to established protocols. By enforcing these clothing rules, the Hells Angels maintain their distinctive image that has become recognized worldwide. Number 4. Handling club business.
We had a really good relationship and it was working. But the problem with the HAs, their individual charters are ran independently.
The Hells Angels have developed specific methods for conducting club business, resolving conflicts, and making decisions that have helped maintain order within their organization for over 70 years. These protocols aren't suggestions, they're mandatory procedures that keep the Brotherhood functioning smoothly despite operating largely outside mainstream society's rules and expectations. At the heart of club business is the weekly or bi-weekly church meeting, where important matters are discussed and decided. These meetings typically happen on the same day each week, often Sunday afternoons, which is where the term church originated. The clubhouse is secured before these meetings begin, with prospects sometimes assigned to stand watch outside. Inside, the gathering follows strict rules of order, with the president or highest-ranking officer present controlling the floor. Members speak only when recognized and must show complete respect for the chain of command throughout the proceedings. Interrupting officers or speaking out of turn is considered seriously disrespectful and may result in being fined, asked to leave, or facing other punishments. Church meetings follow a consistent format. They typically begin with roll call to note attendance and absences. The president then outlines the agenda, often starting with reports from officers about finances, upcoming events, or security concerns. New business is addressed next, followed by any disciplinary matters that need attention. Members are expected to remain attentive and sober throughout these meetings, which can sometimes last several hours depending on the issues being discussed. Voting is a critical aspect of Hells Angels' decision-making, creating a democratic element within their rigid hierarchy. Major decisions, including accepting new members, disciplinary actions, or significant club activities, require a vote, often needing unanimous or near-unanimous support. Each full member gets one vote regardless of rank, though prospective members have no voting rights. Voting methods vary by chapter, with some using simple hand raises, while others prefer written ballots for sensitive matters. This balance between leadership authority and collective decision-making helps ensure that important decisions have broad support within the club. Conflict resolution follows established protocols designed to prevent minor disagreements from escalating into serious problems that could divide the club. When conflicts arise between members, they're expected to first attempt to resolve the issue privately, man to man. If that fails, they bring the matter to club officers who mediate the dispute. Only as a last resort would an issue be brought before the entire membership during a church meeting. Members who repeatedly cause conflicts or fail to resolve them properly may face scrutiny about their commitment to Brotherhood values. For more serious conflicts, especially those involving potential violations of club rules, formal proceedings may be conducted. The accused member has an opportunity to defend himself, witnesses can speak, and eventually the membership votes on any consequences. The Sergeant-at-Arms typically oversees these proceedings, maintaining order throughout. While not structured like a courtroom, these hearings provide members with a chance to present their side before facing judgment from their brothers. This process, while not a formal legal proceeding, provides a structured way to handle internal issues. Financial matters receive particularly careful attention. The treasurer maintains detailed records of all club funds, tracking every dollar that comes in through dues, events, and other sources. Major expenditures require approval through established channels, typically needing officer authorization or a membership vote depending on the amount. Monthly financial reports are standard practice in most chapters. Members entrusted with club funds are held to high standards of accountability, with serious consequences for mismanagement or theft of club money, potentially including beating, expulsion, or worse. Relations with other chapters and with the national or international organization follow specific protocols. Local chapters maintain significant autonomy in day-to-day operations, but must follow broader organizational directives on major issues affecting the club's reputation or security. Communication between chapters happens through designated representatives, often the president or a specially appointed liaison officer, ensuring that messages are accurately conveyed and relationships remain stable. Annual or semi-annual gatherings bring representatives from multiple chapters together to address larger issues facing the organization. Interactions with other motorcycle clubs, whether friendly or hostile, are handled according to established traditions. The Hells Angels have formal alliances with some clubs, often called support clubs, and ongoing conflicts or beefs with others. These relationships don't change based on individual members' preferences. They're official club positions that everyone must respect. Members are expected to understand these relationships and act accordingly, never making independent decisions that could affect the club's standing with other organizations. Planning events, runs, and club activities involves careful coordination, with responsibilities assigned to various members according to their skills and position. Charity rides, parties, and other public events require attention to security, finances, and public relations. The club's reputation is always a priority, with members expected to present a unified front to outsiders while following established protocols behind the scenes. Number 3. Restricted use of technology. In today's world where most people live their lives online, the Hells Angels take a deliberately cautious approach to technology. The club has strict rules limiting how members can use phones, computers, and social media. Rules designed to protect the organization from surveillance and maintain the secrecy that has helped them survive for decades. The fundamental principle behind these technology restrictions is simple. Anything digital can be monitored, recorded, and used as evidence. The Hells Angels understand that text messages, emails, social media posts, and phone calls create permanent records that can be accessed by law enforcement. To minimize this risk, the club restricts what members can discuss through digital channels. Club business must never be discussed over the phone or through text messages. Important matters are only addressed in person, preferably in secure locations like the clubhouse that may be regularly swept for listening devices. When members need to communicate remotely, they often use pre-arranged code words or vague language that wouldn't be meaningful to outsiders who might be monitoring communications. Social media presents particular risks that the Hells Angels take seriously. Many chapters prohibit members from having social media accounts entirely. Those that allow social media impose strict rules: no posting photos of club gatherings, no identifying other members, no discussing club activities, and no displaying club insignia in ways that connect real identities to club membership. Some chapters require members to use fake names on social media and maintain strict privacy settings. When attending club meetings, members may be required to leave their phones outside the room or place them in signal-blocking containers. This prevents both intentional and accidental recording of sensitive discussions. Some chapters have designated phone-free zones within clubhouses where important conversations happen. For necessary communications about sensitive matters, many Hells Angels use burner phones, prepaid devices that can be easily discarded, or encrypted messaging apps that offer more security than standard text messages. Even with these precautions, members are trained to assume all digital communications could potentially be monitored. Photos and videos present another technological risk. While members might take pictures at events for personal memories, strict rules govern what can be captured and how those images can be shared. Photos showing illegal activities, chapter gatherings, or identifying multiple members together are particularly restricted. Some chapters ban photography entirely at certain events. The Hells Angels' careful approach extends to their online presence as an organization. Official websites and social media accounts, when they exist, are carefully managed by designated members and contain only information already publicly available. These official channels never discuss internal matters or current activities. Members also receive guidance about protecting their personal devices. Password protection, encryption, and regular security checks for tracking software or spyware are common practices, especially for members in leadership positions who might be specific targets for surveillance. These technology restrictions might seem paranoid to outsiders, but they reflect the club's long experience with law enforcement infiltration and surveillance. By maintaining these strict limits on digital communication, the Hells Angels uphold their traditional emphasis on face-to-face interaction and verbal agreements, reinforcing the code of secrecy and silence that has long been central to their survival. Number 2. Secrecy and silence. Perhaps no rule is more fundamental to the Hells Angels' survival than their code of secrecy and silence. This unwritten law governs how members interact with the outside world, particularly when it comes to law enforcement, the media, and anyone else curious about the club's activities. The simplest version of this rule is often expressed as, "What happens in the club stays in the club." Members are forbidden from discussing internal matters with anyone outside the organization. Not with friends, not with family, not even with spouses in many cases. Church meetings, chapter decisions, conflicts between members, and club operations must remain strictly confidential. The only people entitled to this information are patched members in good standing. This secrecy extends especially to interactions with law enforcement. The Hells Angels follow a strict no-cooperation policy with police and other authorities. Members are expected to remain silent when questioned, regardless of the circumstances. The phrase, "I have nothing to say," becomes a mantra in these situations. Members are taught to request a lawyer immediately and to say absolutely nothing without legal representation present. The consequences for breaking this code of silence are among the most severe the club imposes. Members who share information with law enforcement, snitching, face immediate expulsion from the club and may face violent retaliation. Even in cases where a member faces serious prison time, cooperation with authorities in exchange for leniency is considered an unforgivable betrayal of the Brotherhood. Media interactions are similarly restricted. Unauthorized interviews or providing information to journalists, authors, or filmmakers about the club can result in serious consequences. When the Hells Angels do interact with media, it happens through carefully selected spokespeople who have explicit permission to represent the club. These representatives stick to approved talking points and never discuss sensitive internal matters. The secrecy rule applies even to seemingly innocent conversations. Members learn to deflect questions about the club with humor, vague responses, or by changing the subject. They're trained to recognize when casual conversations might be fishing for information and to be constantly aware of who might be listening. Court proceedings present particular challenges to the code of silence. Members called to testify in cases involving other members face difficult choices. Lying under oath carries legal risks, while telling the truth might violate club rules. The Hells Angels typically instruct members to claim a lack of knowledge or memory, rather than directly lie or cooperate. In some cases, members have accepted contempt of court charges and jail time rather than testify against brothers. This wall of silence extends to prospective members who learn early in their association with the club that asking too many questions or sharing too much information marks them as untrustworthy. The prospecting period serves partly to evaluate candidates' ability to maintain secrecy before they're trusted with sensitive information. Even in the digital age, when information flows freely and privacy seems increasingly rare, the Hells Angels maintain their traditional emphasis on secrecy. This discipline has helped them survive decades of law enforcement efforts to infiltrate and dismantle their organization. The effectiveness of their code of silence is evident in how little concrete information has emerged about their internal operations, despite their high profile. For the Hells Angels, secrecy isn't just about avoiding legal consequences, it's about maintaining the mystique and brotherhood that defines their identity. However, for those who fail to maintain this secrecy, or who break other club rules, the consequences can be swift and severe. Number 1. Consequences for breaking rules. The Hells Angels rules wouldn't mean much without enforcement, and the club has developed a graduated system of punishments to address violations. These consequences range from minor penalties for small infractions to severe punishment for serious betrayals, creating a disciplinary system that maintains order within the Brotherhood. Minor rule violations, like missing a meeting without a legitimate excuse, showing up late to events, or failing to properly maintain club attire, typically result in fines. These financial penalties vary based on the specific violation and the members' history, but they provide a constant reminder that rules matter. Paying these fines promptly is itself a rule, with additional consequences for those who delay. For more significant violations, members might face temporary suspensions from club activities. During these periods, suspended members cannot attend club functions, wear club colors, or represent the Hells Angels in any way. These suspensions serve both as punishment and as a cooling-off period, giving members time to reflect on their actions and recommit to following the rules. Certain violations require more direct physical punishment. While the specifics aren't generally discussed publicly, members who disrespect leadership, cause problems while representing the club, or break other important rules might face physical discipline administered by the sergeant-at-arms or other members. These beatdowns aren't about causing serious injury, but about providing memorable consequences for unacceptable behavior. For more serious offenses, members might be required to surrender their patches temporarily, a significant punishment in a culture where the patches represent membership and identity. Having to remove the colors is deeply humiliating and serves as a public acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Members without patches lose their voting rights and other privileges until they earn their way back into good standing. The most severe punishment short of expulsion is a bad standing designation. Members in bad standing remain part of the club, but face significant restrictions and lose the respect and support normally offered to brothers. This status is usually temporary, with specific requirements the member must meet to return to good standing. The ultimate punishment is expulsion from the club, being out bad or out in bad standing. This permanent removal happens for the most serious violations. Cooperating with law enforcement, stealing from the club, showing cowardice in critical situations, or other major betrayals of trust. Expelled members must surrender all club property, remove or cover Hells Angels tattoos, and have no further contact with members. In some cases, particularly those involving cooperation with authorities, expelled members may face threats of violence. What makes the Hells Angels disciplinary system effective is its consistency and the certainty of consequences. Every member knows that violations will be addressed, with no exceptions even for high-ranking officers. This creates an environment where following the rules becomes second nature, not just because of fear of punishment, but because members understand that these rules maintain the order and unity that gives the club its strength. The consequences aren't administered arbitrarily. Most chapters have established procedures for determining guilt and deciding appropriate punishment, often involving discussion among officers or votes by the full membership. This process helps ensure that discipline remains fair and proportional, rather than becoming personal or vindictive. Through this comprehensive system of consequences, the Hells Angels maintain the structure and discipline that has allowed them to survive for over 7 decades, while other outlaw motorcycle clubs have fractured or disappeared. The knowledge that rule-breaking will result in meaningful punishment keeps members in line and reinforces the seriousness of the commitment they've made to the Brotherhood.